Chapter 221, The Two Greek Sisters. Her words caused Feng Lin to stop in his tracks. The method to attain a breakthrough and become an elite cultivator? Feng Lin had stopped at the paragon phase for a while. Although his vitality had surpassed the limit of 100, his genes had reached a bottleneck and hadn't been able to take another step forward to reach a brand new world. He had initially thought that it was just because he hadn't encountered the right juncture for a breakthrough. However, based on what this delicate-looking lady said, there seemed to be something beyond this. Feng Lin cast his gaze toward the fierce-looking young lady and discovered that she was already an elite cultivator. This made her words even more persuasive. After all, there was a living proof right here which boosted her credibility, and it didn't seem to be a fraud. He had to say that the delicate-looking lady was very clever and grasped hold of what was most important to Feng Lin. She could tell that Feng Lin had wavered but didn't fully believe her. Her voice transmitted out once again through mental waves, trying to lead him on. Attaining a breakthrough to become an elite cultivator is the most crucial step on the mythological path. Interstellar cultivators only grasp transcendent powers and only need to go through gene evolution. The difficulty isn't too great. And once a person becomes an elite cultivator, their entire body would be modified by genetic power and go through energy evolution, becoming actual transcendent life forms. This requires a life transformation and wasn't as simple as a gene evolution. It contains an even deeper level of profoundness. Feng Lin didn't pursue this problem anxiously, nor did he fall into the rhythm of the other party's words. Instead, he jumped out and asked in a low voice, "I don't think we know each other. How do you know that I haven't attained a breakthrough in my cultivation?" "This is related to my ability," the delicate-looking lady said calmly, merely brushing on her ability briefly. She was wary and didn't reveal her capabilities. Instead, she said, "I can tell that you've exceeded the vitality limit for interstellar cultivators, but you haven't attained a breakthrough in your realm. Although I have no idea how you surpassed the vitality limit, there's no doubt that you've reached a bottleneck." She leaned on her younger sister's back, communicating with Feng Lin while they were running and avoiding the pursuit of the death criminals. Feng Lin's countenance remained calm and he asked again, "Then how do you know my name?" The delicate-looking lady revealed a faint smile. "I don't just know your name. I also know that you come from Earth High School from Earth's Huaxia City and was born in a great clan, the Feng clan. However, you didn't awaken your clan's hereditary genes, but instead created a gene path for yourself." She brought up Feng Lin's background very clearly. If ordinary people didn't know about it, they would have thought that the relationship between her and Feng Lin was extremely close. Otherwise, how could she know about these in such great detail? "You investigated me?" Feng Lin's countenance immediately turned grim, and he emitted a dangerous aura once again. He was certain that he didn't know this lady before. Why did she understand him in such great detail? What was she plotting? The delicate-looking lady was very tactful and only looked at Feng Lin's countenance before immediately understood that he had a misunderstanding. "Don't be mistaken. I have the information about all the exam candidates in my head. My gene path doesn't have a super strong battle prowess, however, this is my ability. Before coming for the tests, I have made use of the star network to investigate the information of all the candidates." She pointed to her head and said casually, as if what she mentioned was an insignificant matter. "An interstellar hacker?" Candidates' information was confidential and only top-notch interstellar hackers would be able to hack through all the firewalls within a short period of time and grasping all candidates' information. Never judge a book by its cover. To think that this delicate-looking lady had such an amazing hacking ability. Moreover, her brain powers were also very strong for her to be able to remember all of the information. Feng Lin's trust in her grew a little. Once mental-type genes were awakened, the users would be able to develop their brain powers tremendously, allowing them to possess extraordinary memories and wisdom. Feng Lin's spirit gene was one that was more inclined toward grasping mental energy. Based on his earlier observations, this delicate-looking lady seemed to have taken another path that was more inclined toward hypnotism techniques. The communications via thoughts occurred in just an instant. At this moment, the death criminals came attacking toward them from all directions. The leader of the gang put his hands together, bringing forth his genetic ability to create a huge tremor to the earth. The bottom crusts formed a huge wave that came surging over. Wherever the earthquake passed by, mountains would collapse and the earth would shatter, wanting to engulf these pair of sisters completely. The fierce-looking young lady's long and slender legs were strong, beautiful, and filled with an explosive prowess. She leaped high in the sky, jumping non-stop amidst the rocks that were raining down, dodging them with great agility. However, the earth's crust in the surroundings had been completely flipped over, forming a cage that seemed to want to drown them completely. Their lives were on the line, and they were about to be engulfed. No matter how calm the delicate-looking lady had appeared previously, she could no longer remain calm anymore. They were now trapped from all directions, and only Feng Lin's flying ability could aid them to break out of this situation. Gene evolution isn't that simple. Attaining a breakthrough to become an elite cultivator requires a unique profoundness. You've been trapped at the interstellar cultivator realm, and we're the only ones who can help you, said she anxiously. Hearing that, Feng Lin no longer hesitated. He raised both of his hands. Rise. Invisible spirit force seethed out, condensing water vapor to form a white cloud that seemed to be material. It floated before the two sisters. Don't resist. Jump onto it, he bellowed in a deep voice. Younger sister, go up, the delicate-looking young lady said in a soft voice. The fierce-looking young lady gritted her teeth and suddenly leaped onto the cloud. The cloud was like a flying carpet, bringing along the two of them and rising up rapidly. Go. With a single thought from Feng Lin, it continued to fly outward. Where are you heading to? The leader amongst the death criminals shouted furiously when he saw the prey that was almost in their hands flying away. Attack them with full power. Strike all of them down. Earthquake waves. He slapped his two hands fiercely toward the ground. A series of intense tremors extended out, and the earth trembled. Seething rocks were thrown into the sky and came smashing toward them. Firebird, flying arrows, wind blades. All the other small fries also utilized their respective means, overthrowing rivers and seas. Feng Lin rubbed his palms together, and the cudgel grew big at a rapid rate, becoming longer and longer, forming a 10-meter-long metal pillar that he held in his hands. His hands started moving at an increasingly faster speed. Woo woo woo! The air started to become viscous under the cudgel's stirring motion, just like seawater, forming a huge vortex. Plunging rocks, flames, ice blades, all sorts of attacks landed into it. Under the cudgel's sweeping motion, all of them were crushed and completely dissipated. None of the attacks landed on the two sisters. Feng Lin grabbed the cudgel with both hands, acting like a divine character who was stirring up the seas and bringing forth a series of typhoons and strong gales, making it hard for one to stand firmly. When the fierce-looking young lady watched this, her eyes lit up. What weapon is this? It's amazing. When will I be able to get my hands on such a powerful weapon? However, when the delicate-looking young lady saw the cudgel's appearance and the words assume one ideal form based on one's intentions, she went deep into thought and her eyes gleamed a little. They weren't the only ones thinking about this. Even Feng Lin himself could sense that this measureless divine metal cudgel had helped him tremendously. He awakened the stone monkey gene and had mighty strength and astonishing speed. However, he only excelled in close combat. After all, The human body had limitations and the power was constrained along with the body, unable to be fully unleashed and having too few variations. On the other hand, this measureless divine metal cudgel could transform freely, feeling like his own arm. It could extend freely, unleashing his powers perfectly, increasing his battle prowess by many times, and improving his means tremendously. He swung the cudgel at full power, creating a huge vortex in the air and scattering all of the attacks. At the same time, his spirit force dragged the two sisters rapidly into the sky, very quickly reaching a height of 10,000 meters. This already far surpassed the height that the death criminals' attacks could reach. Their prey had escaped. Those people kept on shouting furiously, feeling flustered and exasperated. Why aren't we leaving? The cloud floated in the sky, but not moving. The fierce-looking lady asked anxiously. Feng Lin turned, wore a faint smile. The two of you seem to have forgotten something. I just saved the two of you. Aren't you supposed to tell me the crux to attaining a breakthrough? What? You want to know the secret of a breakthrough to the elite cultivation realm like this? How can things be so simple? The wild-looking young lady glared and said furiously, wanting to make a move if the talks fell through. Feng Lin wore an unnatural smile. You better think things through before you make a move. We're 10,000 meters high up in the sky. If I were to withdraw my spirit force, the two of you will. He smiled and didn't continue on. It was clear what he was referring to. You dare to threaten me? The fierce-looking young lady was enraged. The delicate-looking young lady held her back and stared at Feng Lin, speaking in a cold voice. What do you want? Her heart sank. They had just gotten away from those death criminals, and now they had landed in Feng Lin's hands. Flying ability was far too rare, and the area 10,000 meters up in the sky was his field. Their abilities were useless. The two sisters' destinies were in his hands. This was clearly something he had already thought about. If they were tossed down from a 10,000-meter height, they would be seriously injured even if they didn't die. They must first stabilize this situation. Feng Lin shook his head. I don't wish to do anything. I kept my promise and saved your life. It's time for the two of you to fulfill your end of the promise now. You dare doubt us? In the name of the god of war Ares and the goddess of wisdom Athena, we'll definitely keep our word, the fierce-looking young lady said furiously. Hearing that, Feng Lin's eyes gleamed. Weren't these the names of Greeks' 12 Olympian gods? In the name of the god of war Ares and the goddess of wisdom Athena? Could it be that their beliefs were in Greek myths and legends, or that these were their mythological paths? This was highly likely. Feng Lin thought back of their performance earlier and felt that this was very possible. The fierce-looking young lady's battle prowess wasn't weak. She was very valiant in battle and in no way weaker than men. Could it be that she was on the god of war Ares' mythological path? However, this was a male god. Feng Lin's expression was very strange. Although he knew that the inheritance of mythological genes was their transcendent characteristics and was irrelevant to one's gender, he still found it to be strange. Could it be that this delicate-looking lady took on Athena's mythological path? She had extraordinary wisdom and her characteristics were a good match with Athena. However, Athena wasn't just the goddess of wisdom. She was also the goddess of war at the same time, being a rare powerful deity even in Greek myths and legends. If this woman were to take on this path, why would her battle prowess be so weak? Was it because the level of her mythological genes was too low, or that there were some other problems elsewhere? Feng Lin entered deep in thought. Seeing that her younger sister was speaking without any restraints, revealing their backgrounds, the delicate-looking young lady's countenance changed drastically. She no longer kept her cool. Sister. An interstellar cultivator's mythological path was their greatest secret. If others were to find out about it, they would no longer be able to hide anything, and others would be very clear about their abilities. If others were to intentionally target them, the situation wouldn't be too optimistic. The fierce-looking young lady covered her mouth and knew that she had said too much. The delicate-looking young lady sighed. She was helpless toward this younger sister of hers. Thankfully, she hadn't said much, and this person shouldn't have realized much. Greek myths and legends had already become very rare and neglected in the interstellar era. Most people only knew of the 12 Olympian gods' names, but didn't understand much about their stories. What they didn't expect was that the two names revealed had already caused Feng Lin to come up with all sorts of connections and guess their backgrounds clearly. Otherwise, they would definitely feel extremely regretful. Feng Lin didn't reveal any abnormality on his face, but he became very interested in the two of them. Since this is a trade and you guys know so much about me, you should also be telling me your names, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair at all. He could tell that the fierce-looking young lady was a little inclined toward being all brawn and no brains. The one he had to pay more attention to was the delicate-looking lady instead. Therefore, he asked this. The delicate-looking lady gave it some thought, not understanding Feng Lin's intentions. However, Feng Lin clearly didn't trust them. If they were unwilling to even give him their names, it would only make him doubt them even more. We're called Yana and Eris. We came from the Heavenly King planet, she said slowly. 2 Greek sisters? Feng Lin's mind cleared up. The names of this pair of sisters were very similar to the god of war Ares and the goddess of wisdom Athena. It was definitely not a coincidence, and he became increasingly certain about his judgment. The delicate-looking Yana frowned. She was extremely intelligent and knew that with the death criminals watching them on the ground, it wasn't a good idea for them to continue to drag things on. Feng Lin, I know that you don't trust us. Similarly, we don't trust you either. Why don't we do this? I'll share with you half of the means of attaining a breakthrough, and after you've brought us to a safe zone, we'll tell you the other half. How about it? She said this with great sincerity, coming to a compromise. This wasn't bad either. Feng Lin secretly thought. Saving this pair of Greek sisters was just something he had done in passing. He wouldn't be losing out if he were to obtain half of the means of attaining a breakthrough in his realm. If this could really give him some inspiration, he wouldn't need to fret over the remaining half. Moreover, if this pair of sisters knew what was good for them, they wouldn't go back on their words and offend such a great enemy. All right. We'll do as you say. Feng Lin finally nodded. The exchange was completed and Yana didn't drag things on any further. The reason you can't attain a breakthrough in your realm and are stuck at a bottleneck is related to your mythological genes. There are 3 steps to cultivating mythological genes: awakening, strengthening, and evolution respectively. Out of these, the most particular one would be evolution. Most people would be trapped at this stage and unable to cross it. Feng Lin listened patiently, wearing a serious expression, seemingly to be listening attentively. If what Yana had said was the truth, then this would be something he had overlooked previously. If you wish to evolve your mythological genes, the prerequisite would be for you to understand the intrinsic qualities of the mythological genes, integrating and becoming one with it entirely. It's basically split into 2 steps, which are the mythology deduction method and the mythology conclusion method. Chapter 222, Mythology Deduction Method and Mythology Conclusion Method. The Mythology Deduction Method and Mythology Conclusion Method? Feng Lin was surprised. This was a completely brand new approach. It seemed to interfere with the intrinsic nature of cultivation itself, causing him to prick up his ears to listen, not wanting to miss out a single word. That's right. Yana nodded and said, the intrinsic nature of mythological genes' evolution is integration, allowing it to become one with your body and not having control over it. This can be understood in a direct manner. Having control over it only treats the power of the genes as external tools, like wild beasts that needed to be tamed. Regardless of how familiar one is with the control, it would still not belong to the person, and the two wouldn't be able to integrate and become one. On the other hand, integrating requires the understanding of the intrinsic nature of the genes. One must be able to fully display the mythological gene's abilities before undergoing conversion, disassembly, integration, and absorption, becoming one entity with it and allowing it to become an inseparable part of one's body. This would allow one's body to go through a complete and thorough change. The genetic power would seep into every single cell in the person's body, allowing the person's level to leap progressively toward a transcendent state. This is the real intrinsic nature of elite cultivators. And in order to meet the conditions for mythological genes evolution, one would need to use a two-phase technique, which is the mythology deduction method and mythology conclusion method. After a long and elaborated explanation, Feng Lin combined his understanding of mythological genes and felt that Yana's words were filled with a thorough explanation of mythological genes, making one think deeply about it. With this, it wasn't a wasted effort for him to pay a price and save these two sisters. Right now, Yana pursed her lips and continued, the powers of mythological genes are all different, and some of them might even clash. It's very hard to unify them together, allowing them to combine and evolve. Just relying on humans' own efforts to attempt it wastes a lot of time and effort, and it also involves a lot of risks. However, the paths that interstellar humans choose are all mythological paths. How did the ancient characters in myths and legends integrate these extremely different powers together, becoming the supreme and unparalleled transcendent existences? The stories of their myths and legends record the paths that they took and the process in which their genetic powers transformed. Therefore, the conclusion method uses oneself to analyze the paths that the characters from myths and legends took, experiencing the intrinsic nature of mythological genes, and then allowing the evolution to take place naturally. This is also why the core of mythological genes theory is that each myth and legend is a path leading to godhood. The mythology deduction method attests to this theory. This means that the mythology conclusion method is the step done after deducing the mythological path, for one to find out about their evolution paths after comprehending the intrinsic nature. Feng Lin's brows raised. His mind was very active, and he was able to draw inferences from what he was told. That's right. Yana nodded and said, but things aren't that simple. Your logic is only on the application of the mythological genes theory, but theories are easily understood. What is needed is still the actual operating means. It isn't easy to make sense of the principles behind this. There are a lot of details and important points to take note of. I can only tell you the method for the mythology deduction method. After you've sent the two of us to a safe place, I'll then tell you the details for the mythology conclusion method. All right. Feng Lin didn't force the two of them. The mythology deduction method and mythology conclusion method clearly sounded like in-depth knowledge about myths and legends, and were invaluable. It was impractical to obtain all of the information without having to pay a price. It already wasn't bad for him to be able to get half of the information. He listened attentively to Yana's explanation of the mythology deduction method's profoundness. The deduction method is the highest level technique in the logic domain, but the application of it into the mythological genes theories is to change the condition of one's mind, spirit, and essence through deduction of the mythological paths. Through this process, one will gradually get closer to the core nature of mythological genes and resonate with it. Then, through gradual assimilation and absorption, we can slowly display the power of mythological genes. Although mythological genes have already existed in the human body since a long time ago, due to the long period of dormancy and the existence of gene locks, they have become individual entities. even if the genes had already awakened, cultivators would only be able to grasp transcendent genetic power. They wouldn't really be able to connect with their mind, essence, and spirit, and to synchronize with them. The stubborn barriers of the mythological genes remnants are like AI mainframe with great firewalls. If one wished to invade, break through it, or cause it to disintegrate, then they must find a bug. They must find a loophole and the key. The names of mythological genes already revealed the corresponding leads. Therefore, we use the mythology deduction method to harmonize the mind, essence, and spirit, bringing them out completely to become a part of the human body and constructing brand new organs. The mind, essence, and spirit are the basic elements of the human body, but they are also the bridge that connects the mythology deduction method and genetic powers. Yana tried to explain the theory behind the mythology deduction method in simple terms, giving elaborated explanations, and at the end, even reminded Fenglin, these are all the conclusive methods. The methods to decipher the mythological genes would also be different between each gene. You'll need to come up with your own deduction based on the characteristics of your own mythological genes. During this process, your understanding of your mythological path would also deepen. Fenglin nodded, seeming to have comprehended something. This person didn't lie to him. There were no loopholes to the logic of the knowledge Yana had said. Moreover, they were in tandem with the knowledge about the myths and legends he knew about. The degree of credibility was very high. Moreover, Fenglin's spirit gene was extremely sharp and he could sense the tiniest bit of changes to a person's thoughts. It was very difficult to lie to him. We've already told you about the mythology deduction method. You can bring us away from here now, right? Eris said in a stuffy tone, suppressing her great fury, as if Fenglin had taken a great advantage in this situation. Fenglin didn't pay her any heed. He had already seen through these sisters' characters. They were very different. Unlike the elder sister Yana, who was filled with wisdom, it was very likely that the path Eris took was that of the god of war Ares in Greek myths and legends. She was just an impertinent woman. Unless a person beat her up to submission through brute strength, there was no way to talk sense into her. I hope that after I've brought you away from here, the two of you will fulfill your end of the promise. Fenglin took a long look at Yana. Of course. We swear on the names of the Greek gods that we won't break our promise. Yana said. Her younger sister Eris had already let slip of their beliefs and thus she decided not to hide anymore in case Fenglin were to become suspicious toward them. Go. Fenglin didn't say any crap and nodded. At the next moment, his spirit force moved, driving the two clouds to fly into the distance. The clouds moved rapidly, dragging along two long tails behind them, piercing through the air and disappearing into the horizon in the blink of an eye. Howl, howl, howl. Suddenly a series of beast cries rang out from all directions. Strong gales blew in their directions. Something's not right. Both Fenglin and Yana could probe with their mental energy. They instantly realized that something wasn't right and looked downward. The death criminals who had been on the ground had found themselves a horde of monsters that looked like pterosaurs. They rose into the air rapidly with fierce and savage-looking heads, flapping their huge wings and bringing about gusts of strong gales. Don't dream of escaping. No matter how big Azure planet is, there's no way that you guys will be able to flee from us. The leader of the death criminals sat on the biggest pterosaur monsters and kept on bellowing. Hang on tight. Fenglin's countenance turned grim and at the next moment, the clouds under their feet once again accelerated, soaring up to a height of 20,000 meters above the sea. Being high up in the sky, the intensity of Azure planet's scorching light rays was even stronger. Both Fenglin and Eris's physiques were strong and weren't affected much, but Yana was weaker and this was a little hard for her to withstand. Her countenance turned increasingly pale, losing all color. However, she continued to grit her teeth and hang on. She was clear what the current situation was like and didn't complain. This revealed her strong will that was unlike that of her body's tolerance. Segment 3782. Pata pata. The pterosaur beasts that the group of people rode on flapped their wings very loudly and flew very quickly. However, they were still a far cry from Feng Lin's cloud-soar ability. They were shaken off far away and could no longer see their targets. However, things weren't that simple. Whenever Feng Lin slowed down a little, those people would accelerate and catch up to them, once again appearing within the range of their spiritual senses. Those monsters' sense of smell is very sharp, and they can give chase by following our scents. Yana spoke up and shared her guess. Feng Lin nodded, thinking the same. These wild beasts were capable of gliding in the air. Although their speed wasn't too fast, this saved them a lot of effort. With their sharp sense of smell, they continued to follow them from afar and wouldn't lose track of their targets. Clearly, these death criminals had the intention to drag them down no matter what. They could tell that the cloud-soar ability expended a lot of spirit force. Its speed was extraordinarily fast, but sooner or later, Feng Lin's reservoir of power would be depleted and they would be able to catch up. We must deal with those pterosaur monsters. Otherwise, we won't be able to escape. Yana spoke in a cold voice and said to the fierce-looking young lady, Eris, use your tyrant aura. All right. Eris had long since been raring to try, unable to hold it in. Roar. Her valiant face was filled with savageness, and she let out an enraged roar toward the sky like a ferocious tiger. Endless domineering auras scattered out together with the sound waves, like the king of the forest was trying to defend his territory, filled with prestige and ferocity. Those pterosaur monsters were astonished by this aura and immediately flapped their wings wildly, as if they had been frightened. They started to fly around crazily, slow down, and fall toward the ground. Those death criminals kept on shouting and lashing out their whips, but were still unable to suppress the horror in the monsters' hearts. Ha ha ha. Eris stood on the cloud, laughing loudly with her hands at her waist. She appeared very proud of herself. Was this her awakened gene? Feng Lin sensed the domineering aura that lingered in the air. It was very similar to the baleful aura he had encountered previously, but was even more domineering. It had greater prestige and wildness yet was a lot less bloody and eerie. Was this the tyrant aura gene? Feng Lin secretly thought to himself. As expected of a god of war's mythological path. The genetic power was really special. The pterosaur monsters rolled around and plunged to the earth. Cover their ears. The leader of the pack let out an enraged bellow. It was only then did the other death criminals come to a realization, and everyone took out things to cover the monster's ears. Since they couldn't hear any sounds, they would naturally not be astonished by the tyrant aura from her voice. The monsters returned to normal. Ah! Eris's smile stiffened up. She discovered that those monsters had ignored her tyrant aura and had taken flight once again. She once again howled in rage. However, the pterosaur monsters were no longer affected in the least. She shouted until her throat was hoarse, but there were still no effects at all. Damn it! Eris was extremely enraged. In order to take care of her older sister, she was unable to deal with the death criminals that filled up the sky. Right now, it seemed like all the pterosaur monsters were setting themselves up against her. Tyrant aura equipment. She emitted thick black auras that were viscous like oil encompassing her entire body. They rapidly solidified to become an armor that covered her entire body. Eris instantly turned into a battle goddess who had walked out from the myths and legends. Her auras were pressing as heavy as a mountain, as scorching as fire, and scattering down like endless divine prowess. Howl. Those pterosaur monsters glared with wide-open eyes. Their massive bodies trembled nonstop, as if they had seen an extremely terrifying existence and were feeling fear from the bottom of their hearts. They circled and once again plunged toward the ground, bringing along the death criminals with them. They entered a state of chaos once again. "Cover their eyes," that leader once again bellowed furiously. With the previous experience, those death criminals acted swiftly this time around, covering the pterosaur monster's eyes, letting them fly by following the scents. Their eyes and ears were all covered up. Eris's attempt to use Tyrant Aura to astonish the monsters from a distance instantly lost its effect. She shouted until her throat was hoarse, but it was all meaningless. She felt dejected and could only give up. Seeing Eris fully equipped, Fenglin entered deep in thought. This Tyrant Aura seemed to be more inclined toward increasing one's battle prowess and could take on a material form. However, the power to astonish needed to be transmitted through light rays and sound waves. Otherwise, they would be meaningless. The leader of the death criminals was also a powerful elite cultivator and could tell this. Therefore, her efforts turned out to be futile. However, even though covering the eyes and ears would allow them to fend off the Tyrant Aura, but would they be able to fend off the invisible spirit force? The corners of Fenglin's lips curled up into a hint of a smile. He instantly made a move, condensing his spirit force into swords and shot them out. The spirit swords were invisible and immaterial. All of the monsters were struck and plunged toward the ground like dumplings. Their simple and violent minds were crushed into paste. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. When Yana saw this, her unique mental energy turned into golden sharp arrows that shot out, completely killing the monster's will. They turned into a large pile of mushy meat on the ground. Fenglin didn't stop and controlled the cloudsoar to fly to the distance. The death criminals plunged in a battered state, cursing nonstop. However, without the pterosaurs, it was impossible for them to continue giving chase. Fenglin stood in the air, flew rapidly for over 100 kilometers, and looked into the distance. He suddenly saw a waterfall amidst a majestic mountain. There was an isolated island in the abyss under the waterfall. There were no signs of any life forms and was a quiet and secluded place. He didn't sense much danger through his spirit force's scan and thus controlled the clouds to land rapidly onto the isolated island, letting the two Greek sisters alight. The moment they touched down, Eris protected her elder sister Yana behind her, looking warily at Fenglin. Fenglin didn't pay her any heed but said to Yana, "I've already brought the two of you to a safe place. You can tell me about the mythology conclusion method now, right?" He released a dangerous aura. If these two sisters dared to lie to him, he won't hold back just because they were ladies. Even though Eris was already an elite cultivator, Fenglin's vitality was in no way weaker than hers. He also had the measureless divine metal cudgel and wouldn't lose out. Yana likely walked the path of the goddess of wisdom, Athena. Her intelligence was greater than others, and she was clear what the consequences would be if they were to infuriate Fenglin. She smiled and didn't create any more trouble. Of course. The mythology conclusion method is a gene evolution method that is established upon the mythology deduction method. When you deduce the mythological path, you're like an actor, comprehending the paths taken by the characters from the myths and legends, experiencing the intrinsic nature of mythological genes. But one mustn't attempt to pass off what was fake as the truth. It was required to be engrossed, but not wallow within it. One must constantly keep a clear mind, like a veteran trooper experiencing the intrinsic qualities of opera, refining the glow of human nature. What interstellar cultivators need to do is to combine their own comprehensions and the essence of the mythological genes, allowing them to evolve to the juncture of a more advanced gene. So that's how it is. Yana kept on explaining and Fenglin learned a lot from it as well. The layer of fog that covered his heart was gradually removed, revealing the hidden truth. At this point, Yana no longer tried to hide anything. He continued to add on. Although the mythology deduction method and mythology conclusion method are two steps, they complement each other and there isn't a need to intentionally split them up. In fact, in most situations, both of them would proceed concurrently. A type of unique mythological gene exists in this world. They are called hereditary genes. Their evolution method is to completely merge the mythology deduction method and mythology conclusion method together into one, not having any differentiation. This is called memory art. Chapter 223, Breaking the Knowledge Barrier. Memory art. Just a calm line sparked endless memories from Feng Lin's heart. It was as if a divine thunderbolt had hacked through the chaos, removing all perplexities. He finally understood why it was so easy to attain a breakthrough to become an interstellar cultivator. It was like the natural flow of things, and he hadn't encountered any barriers. Every gene was different from another. The monkey gene and stonebirth gene were both the lowest-level basic genes and also the most inferior low-grade strengthening type genes. They only provided strengthening and keen senses. All aspects of the abilities were very simple, and there was nothing profound about them. As long as they were awakened, anyone would be able to quickly comprehend the nature of these genetic powers. There would be no doubt at all. Once the conditions were met, there would be no bottlenecks at all. The quality of these two genes was too low, and other than their abilities, there was nothing else. There was no difficulty at all in integrating and evolving them. Feng Lin had also used the genetic equation to strengthen it to over 10 points, far surpassing its original limits. With that, the evolution would face even less difficulty. He became an interstellar cultivator straight away, without any difficulty. To put it simply, the monkey gene and stonebirth gene didn't require the two profound techniques, mythology deduction method and mythology conclusion method, to comprehend their nature. His path as a cultivating apprentice was very steady and fast. He had to say that this was one of the few merits to the two basic genes. Otherwise, if Feng Lin had encountered a bottleneck in his cultivation realm while he was still an apprentice, he wouldn't know what to do. However, after becoming an interstellar cultivator, everything was different. The stone monkey gene was a mutated primeval gene and also a rare hereditary gene. It contained Sun Wukong's legacy, and strengthening alone wouldn't allow him to understand its nature. He could only use its abilities, but not control them as he wished, to become one with it. When Feng Lin had become an interstellar cultivator previously, he had also turned into a stone monkey, sinking into the fantasy of the flower fruit mountain. After going through an experience that was both illusory and real at the same time, he comprehended the arts of transforming energy into qi as well as absorbing the essence of the sun and the moon. He had benefited a lot from them. However, at a later time, as the great sage will was too stubborn and unbridled, repeatedly stirring up Feng Lin's will and making him feel wary, Feng Lin stopped trying to use memory art to comprehend the stone monkey gene's nature. By the looks of it, this was merely him having reservations and creating trouble for himself. The corners of Feng Lin's eyes curled up into a faint ridiculing smile. His previous methods had been too foolish. So what if his great sage will was stubborn? If he couldn't even get it to submit to him, why would he still need to continue cultivating? The path of cultivation was destined to be filled with all sorts of danger and hurdles. Only by having the courage to press on and clearing the hurdles would one be unrestrained and reach the pinnacle. They would then be able to break apart the chain of destiny which mere mortals had in remaining insignificant and inferior. What was cultivation? To conquer one's heart. Feng Lin seemed to have comprehended a lot. His body trembled and he sank into a mysterious realm, his spirit clear and having no perplexities. He didn't even care about the Greek sisters in front of him. As the breakthrough occurred through him following his spirit, His body's aura also underwent a change and seeped into the void. It was omnipresent and implicated everything in the world. Suddenly, the place he was standing seemed to have become a huge vortex, gathering all the air and forming an intense tornado that surrounded him. Such a change instantly caused the Greek sister's countenance to change. Epiphany? This is an epiphany. Streams of mysterious comprehensions kept on gushing out nonstop like spring water from the mountains, enlightening him. Feng Lin suddenly realized a huge hidden danger which had always existed, but he hadn't realized it before. As Feng Lin had crossed over to this world, he didn't have a strong sense of belonging to this unfamiliar interstellar era. Taking care of his parents and family was just his duties as a son. However, he didn't have much feelings for them. This was also why he had been very cold to his parents and younger siblings in this life. It was because he had crossed over to this world that Feng Lin always had an intense feeling of estrangement to the people and things in this world. This was also reflected in the mythological genes. In his previous life, he had been an ordinary person with nothing special. After he had inherited this person's memories, Feng Lin didn't have a thorough personal understanding of mythological genes. He had always treated them as a strange supernatural ability, but didn't realize that this was a fundamental mistake instead. Since there was the word gene in mythological genes, it meant that they contained the most basic genetic life code. They were the most basic part of the human body and didn't have any distinctions. They participated in the creation of life and matter. If they were treated as a supernatural ability, it would be equivalent to treating mythological genes as an external tool that could only be grasped but not understood at a deeper and more intrinsic level. This was a type of arrogance and despise in one's cultivating mindset. Feng Lin had grasped the concept of genetic equations and had always made use of genetic potential to strengthen genes, allowing them to reach an extremely high level within a short period of time. However, he neglected the comprehension of mythological genes. The effect of strengthening was extremely dominating, and one would be able to neglect this flaw in usual cases. However, after this hidden problem persisted for a prolonged period of time, the effects had accumulated and instead become Feng Lin's greatest obstacle at the moment. This caused Feng Lin to be unable to become one with the mythological genes, stopping its evolution to a higher level. Genetic formula was just genetic formula. The simple and intrinsic formula pointed out the direction for the cultivation's progress, but it would still require great care in deciding how to progress on the path. This was clearly a type of knowledge barrier. Javara, for those who are aware of the problem, if there is one, their hearts would repent, basking in purity, not in fondness or joy. If the heart is unsure, without knowledge, there is only ignorance. To simplify things, the more people knew, the more they would fall into a deeply rooted habitual line of thinking. They would think that they had understood what they knew very thoroughly, and would be unwilling to spend the effort to study them. However, what they didn't know was that they had thus lost the true essence of knowledge. This was how things were for Feng Lin at the moment. He reflected. All along, he had relied on his understanding toward mythological genes as well as the existence of genetic equation, focusing on strengthening genes and raising his cultivation. Due to this, he had neglected the intrinsic nature of cultivation, forgotten about his original intentions. Only by not forgetting one's original intentions would they be able to eventually achieve success. Kacha. His heart cleared up, appearing like a majestic scene of a white moonlight. An invisible lock in Feng Lin's heart had been broken. It was also like his heart had been covered in dust for very long and now it was wiped clean, revealing its crystal-clear nature, no longer tainted by dust. Originally, there wasn't a single thing, so where does dust alight? Breaking the knowledge barrier, once again revealing the true nature. There were no worries in Feng Lin's heart. He had completely set his heart free. Idealism propels materialism. The genetic power that had been suppressed in his body for very long was stimulated completely, circulating in like flowing water and seeping to every inch of his body. Water brings benefit to all living creatures, but doesn't fight for fame. The spirit force and powers of the stone monkey gene both flowed to all parts of his body, nourishing every single cell without a trace. Nuclei, cellular fluid, cell membrane. Every microscopic structure in his body was soaked by genetic power, sending out transcendent waves. Genetic power seeped into his body's meridians, creating brand new life elements, and the intrinsic nature of life started to transform. Streams of strange auras extended out from Feng Lin's body, bringing forth roaring winds and even light rays and water vapor. All gathered toward him. Light rays shone down on the water vapor, creating refractions and a dazzling rainbow that was like a ribbon circled around him. It was a beautiful sight. Transcendence. At the sight of this strange scene, Eris's eyes opened wide and she couldn't help but gasp. Having already become an elite cultivator, he naturally was clear about this transcendence process. The genetic power started to split into tiny particles, seeping into the cells in the human body and undergoing a transcendence transformation. Although she knew that her elder sister had told him about the profoundness behind the mythology deduction method and mythology conclusion method, thus it was just a matter of time before he attained a breakthrough to the next realm, she hadn't expected for Feng Lin to do it so quickly. It happened so fast that it caught people off guard. Seeing that the transcendence aura coming from Feng Lin was getting increasingly dense, as if he had sunk into an epiphany and couldn't hold back, Eris' eyes moved, emitting intense killing intent. She said to Yana, "Sister, should we?" She did a throat-cutting sign while wearing a fierce expression. Seeing Feng Lin's strange condition, Yana lowered her eyes slightly and went into deep thought. As expected of a genius who had opened up his own mythological path. His comprehension was very high and beyond one's imagination. To think that he had taken so little time to comprehend the crux of becoming an elite cultivator and that his genetic power had started to transcendize his body, it was ridiculous. After completing this step and then using the two methods to probe deeply into his memories of myths and legends, it was a done deal for him to become an elite cultivator. When she saw her younger sister's fierce expression, Yana gave it some thought but eventually shook her head and said in a soft voice, "There's no need for that. This Feng Lin is also a ruthless and meticulous person. He definitely will be on guard. He has entered an epiphany and this is a very crucial point to a cultivator. If we were to mess with him, we might end up becoming life or death enemies with him. This isn't necessary and we'll lose more than what we can gain. We have no feuds with him and there isn't a need for us to be doing this." "All right." Hearing that, Eris felt disappointed. She still remembered how Feng Lin had blackmailed them to give him the knowledge of how to attain a breakthrough to the next realm. She wasn't a person with a good temperament to begin with, so how could she possibly be able to accept the fact that they had lost out to Feng Lin's extortions? They'd have gotten the worst of it if they didn't let this guy suffer a little. However, she knew that her elder sister had always been a person with her own ideas and was 100 times more clever than she was. Therefore, there must be a reason why her elder sister said this. This guy got away lightly. She threw a fierce glare toward Feng Lin and didn't attempt any foolish acts. In fact, what Yana was totally right. Feng Lin had come a long way without relying on anyone. How could he possibly not be on his guard? If that was the case, there wouldn't even be any ashes left to him. While he entered an epiphany, he didn't forget to separate a hint of his spirit out in case others were to take advantage of this situation. He could sense these two sisters' every move and action. If they were to make any reckless moves, it wouldn't escape his probes. Seeing that they didn't show any excessive actions, but instead started to guard him, Feng Lin developed a good impression toward them. They didn't take advantage of him while he was down. This showed that the two of them weren't despicable people and were worth making friends with. Right now, his spirit force and genetic power encompassed around his entire body like fog, seeping into the very depths and not leaving any gaps. Each and every single one of his cells emitted a transcendent glow that was dazzling and filled with vitality, twitching non-stop. Living matters that had transcendent attributes were created and entered every part of his body. Feng Lin felt as if all the potential in his body had been stimulated to the greatest height, and scorching currents gushed out from the depths of his body, seething non-stop. His organs, cells, nuclei. They seeped through layers of his body, from the macroscopic to the microscopic layer, and then into the mythological genes. Feng Lin sensed that his entire self, from inside out, had become translucent and clear like glass. Gradually, his consciousness broke away from the macroscopic dimension and entered the microscopic level. A scene that seemed familiar appeared before him. This was a dark world that was as vast as the universe. Many substances were tangled together like snakes or dragons, presenting an upward spiral form. Some parts of it were emitting light, sometimes bright and sometimes dark, as if they were the countless stars in the sky. This was the mythological gene. Invisible restraints broke free, and the sections of the genes that had been dark and dull suddenly emitted strong light that was like starlight. Light burst out in all directions. They were pure, mysterious, and rustic. Small sparks ignited the entire plains. A stretch of majestic starlight appeared in the universe, and the powers of the mythological genes were stimulated to its greatest degree. Under the illumination of the bright light, the human body became completely translucent. The stimulated genes continued to break, controlling the different groups of nourishment matter. The cells multiplied in numbers, the organs increased. Various parts of the human body kept on being modified, going through an intrinsic life transformation. The cells that had been formed from pure matter gradually started to go through energy evolution. Feng Lin suddenly opened his eyes and sensed the difference to the world. Everything was no longer as simple as being pure matter. They emitted a faint glow in the surroundings. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, there were all sorts of colors and the energy waves could all be seen clearly. Two figures stood out the most amongst them. Right now, the vision before Feng Lin was like a fire torch, radiating astonishing glow. One of them was scarlet like fire, while the other was a purplish gold. They were clearly the Greek sisters. Being an elite cultivator, the intensity of the younger sister Eris' energy was over 3 times stronger than her elder sister's. Her glow was very piercing. This was clearly the ability of spirit vision, allowing one to see the energy of certain life forms. Feng Lin nodded, knowing that this was a result of him undergoing the transcendence process. His eyes had transcendized, and he could already see the energies flow directly. He could imagine that he only needed to use the memory art to comprehend the stone monkey gene's nature and then evolve to a higher realm. He wouldn't experience any barriers and everything would flow naturally. Thank you. He nodded to the Greek sisters and thanked them. One reason was to thank them for imparting him with the profoundness of the mythology deduction method and mythology conclusion method. Another reason was to thank them for guarding him while he was in an epiphany. You're too kind, Yana said in a soft voice, smiling gently. Humph. Eris turned his head and let out a cold snort while wearing an arrogant expression. Our trade is already complete. It was a pleasure. If there's nothing else, I'll be leaving first. I hope that the two of you will go through the test smoothly. We'll meet again if fate brings us together. Feng Lin didn't say much, but greeted them and then turned, preparing to leave via Cloudsoar. At this moment Yana spoke up, making him stop in his tracks once again. Feng Lin, do you wish to become the king of the solar system? Chapter 224, great fortune comes with the danger. King of the solar system? Yana's words caused Feng Lin's heart to leap as he involuntarily paused his steps. What do you mean? He asked in a heavy voice. Nothing much. But if you want to become the #1 candidate in the second round of examinations, it would be too tough to achieve this alone. However, I might be able to help you. Yana smiled, her eyes gleaming with intelligence as though everything was within her control. Although she said the word might, the confidence in her tone was apparent to all. Are you that confident? Feng Lin felt slightly puzzled. This Yana's physique was weak. She seemed like she would be knocked down by a blast of wind. It wasn't Feng Lin looking down on her. It was just that such a weak female actually dared to boast of this. Saying that she could help him become the king of the solar system? Where did her confidence come from? Those who heard this would surely feel puzzled. If it wasn't for the fact that he knew Yana was walking on the Athena mythological path and had intelligence far surpassing others, Feng Lin might really have thought that she was joking. You actually still dare to doubt my elder sis's words? Seeing Feng Lin's repeated questioning, Eris instantly felt as though he was stepping on her foot. Her slightly childish face frowned as she bared her teeth, like a ferocious young female tiger. She growled in a low and threatening voice, "Brat, let me tell you that my sister's words are never wrong. She has the good intention to help you, yet you still dare to doubt her? You simply don't know what's good for you." Eris had a wrathful look on her face, but Feng Lin didn't care about her. Their standpoint was different, thus, their way of thinking would naturally be different. This heiress treated the words of her elder sister as a sacred degree. But Feng Lin wasn't even familiar with them. He naturally wouldn't trust Yana blindly. So what if she was walking on the goddess of wisdom's mythological pathway? Feng Lin had his own measure in his heart, and he wouldn't trust others easily. Yana was truly very intelligent. She also understood why Feng Lin would doubt her. She didn't explain too much and merely used her dainty finger to point at her forehead. Her countenance was extremely pale, but her eyes gleamed with incomparable confidence, a light so bright that it was eye-piercing. My intelligence can achieve anything. Her tone was calm, like she was stating facts. She was truly confident in herself from the depths of her heart. Feng Lin's eyes narrowed in thought. After all, it was true that Yana was walking on the Athena mythological path. Athena, as one of the 12 main gods in Greek mythology, both her strength and intelligence could be considered at the peak level on Mount Olympus. It was definitely a paragon mythological path. Could it be that Yana had gained some inheritance related to the Athena mythology path and obtained some unknown ability? Could this be the reason behind her confidence? Should he take a gamble? Feng Lin's heart stirred. Over 10,000 students were taking the second round of examinations, and Feng Lin had the confidence to obtain an exemplary result. However, if he wished to obtain the top position and become the king of the solar system among the younger generation, things wouldn't be so easy. He mustn't lack strength, intelligence, or luck. Each of the 3 aspects couldn't be missing. Becoming the king of the solar system would result in countless benefits, be it fame or power. Feng Lin didn't really care about these, but he knew that the king of the solar system could have an unrivaled influence on everything in the solar system. Fame might seem useless and might bring him trouble in the long run. But in the short term, it would definitely generate huge profits for him. As the saying goes, when one attains the Tao, even his chickens and dogs would rise to the sky. If Feng Lin really became the king of the solar system, other than himself, his family members would also receive great benefits. The only troublesome thing was that a tall tree would surely attract wind. But since he was already a cultivator, he naturally planned to fight for the top position. In the interstellar era, it was basically built upon competition. If one didn't grow in strife and competition, how would they be able to have the strength to suppress their many opponents and seize opportunities? With regards to the Great Tao, there was the concept of ever advancing. Retreat was not an option. Only with a heart that continued to look forward would one be able to push on further with unstoppable momentum. Hence, Feng Lin was very interested in the title of the King of the Solar System. But as to how should he obtain this, he wasn't completely confident. Seeing that Feng Lin was somewhat interested, Yana smiled as she continued, her words cut right to the thick of the meat. Now, there are over 10,000 exam candidates for the second exam. The competition is incomparably intense. If you depend on yourself to hunt the aberrations, the efficiency is simply too low. Others would form teams to hunt the monsters, and their speed would naturally be much faster. Although cultivators usually focused on their own strengths, as numbers are meaningless against a truly powerful opponent, you have to take in mind that this test is a test of how many monsters you can hunt. The more people there are in your team, the faster you naturally would be able to obtain points. As time passed, if you go solo you might be able to gain not too bad a score, but it's way too far-fetched if you want to become the king of the solar system. One couldn't help but say this girl wasn't someone with long hair, but had short sight in terms of her thinking. She instantly listed the points which Feng Lin was worried about. Feng Lin pondered. He didn't disagree. Since this is the case, what idea do you have that can guarantee I will be the top scorer? Yana mysteriously smiled. She confidently continued, to a cultivator, strength is indeed important, but intelligence must not be lacking. Intelligence can be likened to a weapon, which would amplify one's natural strength by many folds. With a strong enough lever, one can even manually move a planet. For those famous experts, all of them had equal strengths in intelligence and power. I have a plan that can allow us to obtain the highest score and become the top scorer within a short period of time. This is the power of intelligence, she unhurriedly spoke. Seeing how confident she was, as if everything was already in her control, Feng Lin also felt curious. What plan do you have? Yana softly laughed. Her dainty finger pointed to the center of her brows. Because all the information about Azure Planet is already in my mind. The different types of aberrations, their distribution and races. I know everything. Feng Lin, you must know that there are differences between aberrations. The points we get awarded with are also dependent on the types of monsters we kill. I know what we should do to raise our efficiency to the max when killing aberrations. Machim? Feng Lin felt something was very strange. From the start until now, Yana had been talking about aberrations, she didn't mention anything about biochemical monsters. Also, by claiming that she had all the information about Azure Planet in her mind, wasn't this too much of an exaggeration? This was a gigantic planet with environments that were much more complex than normal planets. The different living things here, the death criminals, the aberrations, the biochemical monsters, the changes in weather, geographical location, and many different types of sciences, etc. Even though the brains of cultivators were more developed, it was also impossible to store so much information at the same time. Can this Yana really accomplish this? The wisdom gene? Or is it some other ability? Feng Lin had some guesses in his heart, but he had no definitive conclusions. That's right. Yana could see the doubt in his heart. She didn't feel that there was a need to conceal this. Earlier, she had already divulged some information. Any intelligent person would be able to sense something. She then honestly admitted, my mythological gene has something to do with increasing my wisdom and intelligence. My thinking power isn't weaker than the optical AIS. I've already memorized everything there is to memorize about the Azure Planet. Yana's tone was calm, like it was an extremely ordinary thing. Not weaker than a IS? Feng Lin was stunned. However, mythological genes did possess boundless potential. He already didn't feel strange no matter how wondrous the ability of a gene was. If Yana truly had such an ability, his earlier doubts could be perfectly explained. Aberrations? Feng Lin pretended not to know anything as he asked. Aberrations are the name of those biochemical creatures. This is a very remote area of knowledge, and only a few people know about this. Yana honestly replied. In the ancient era, there was once a horror sci-fi movie called Alien. In the movie, there was a race in the universe named the Engineer race. Their biotechnology has already been developed to the peak, and they created a mysterious substance with life, called the black water. This substance would usually take the form of a black liquid, yet it contained genetic codes for life. It is able to fuse with the genes of different biological creatures and undergo mutation and evolution, granting the creatures with limitless evolutionary power. There would be different life forms formed when the black water interacts with different biological creatures. And now, those life forms that were created are all known as aberrations. And in that movie, the rough evolutionary formula was black water plus a man equals zombie. Zombie plus a woman equals tentacle monster, trilobite. Tentacle monster plus engineer equals aberrations. As the science and technology of interstellar humans evolved, some mad scientists would often try to recreate the bioweapons of what the sci-fi movies in the past had shown. And somehow, they managed to succeed in creating the black water. A small bottle of black water would spread like the plague in a life planet, destroying the entire life planet effortlessly. The thought of doing so seemed ridiculous to many people. Why would someone destroy a life planet to test out something? But for scientists, what they pursued was the truth of the universe. They naturally didn't mind making sacrifices to reach the peak of science, making the imaginary into reality. Once such a bioweapon was used, an entire life planet would be doomed. There was no need to sacrifice any soldiers, just a bottle of that black water would do. When the mad scientists revealed their great creation, terror soon began. With great anticipation, humanity stepped upon the planet, which was cleansed of its former life forms, wanting to take over it fully. However, what awaited them was only terror. They became the targets of those who mutated into aberrations. The self-control codes inputted by the scientists during the creation of the black water were all completely devoured by the mutation process when something became an aberration. This was something the scientists had not foreseen. Only then did those humans find out how terrifying the aberrations were. In their minds, there were only slaughter, eating, and evolution. They had no other emotions and even dared to rebel against their masters, which were humans. They were even more fearsome compared to some plague-type bug races in the universe. What was even more terrifying was that these aberrations, under the control of their queen, could leave their eggs in living humans. When these humans returned to their respective home planets, the egg would hatch and burst out from their stomachs, feasting on the other uninfected humans in the surroundings. At that time, it could swiftly spread to over 100 life planets, turning all of them into hells of blood and flesh. This disaster drew the attention of the other humans in the universe. They joined forces and paid a great price before they managed to exterminate the vast majority of aberrations. However, as aberrations were one of the peak-level biochemical creatures created by human science, humanity chose not to annihilate them completely. They brought the surviving aberrations to this Azura planet and deported death criminals here as they continued with their experiments and observation. One can even say that Azura planet was a giant laboratory while the death criminals were the materials needed for the experiments. Yana slowly spoke, speaking of an incomparably cruel truth. Feng Lin and Eris didn't have any looks of shock on their faces. Since they were criminals on death rows, it naturally meant that they had committed unpardonable sins and had lost all human rights. They were expelled from humanity. it was naturally for the best to use them to deal with the aberrations. Evil people would naturally be punished by evil, heaping the aberrations in captivity. Wasn't this a little too daring? But after some thought, Feng Lin understood. Aberrations were such terrifying life forms. Maybe in the ancient Earth era, such creatures were something that ordinary humans couldn't handle. But in this current era, they were no different from pets. The power of the current age's science and technology had far surpassed the imaginations of the past. Destroying a planet or even the universe could actually be accomplished as long as one paid heavy enough price. In the past, didn't the aberrations spread to over 100 life planets? But weren't they exterminated after that? Although these were biochemical monsters, they didn't have any transcendent abilities. They couldn't threaten interstellar humans. From this, Feng Lin understood even more about how terrifying interstellar science was. But why did Yana speak so much about this? What does this has got to do with him becoming the king of the solar system? Feng Lin went straight to the point. You said so many things, but what's the use of it? Yana's dainty finger rubbed the center of her brows gently. She turned even paler, but the light in her eyes grew so bright that people wouldn't dare to look directly at them. Thinking too much would lead to excess exhaustion of her brain power. It was an incomparably huge burden for her with her weak physique. Because I know everything, I can accomplish anything. I have all the information I need. As long as I have enough power to ensure that my plans are going smoothly, I can produce an unimaginable effect. According to my research, the social structure of these aberrations was like ant colonies. Large groups of aberrations would gather at their mother nests, forming a stable ecological structure. The different types of aberrations have different abilities, and their statuses in their race were also different. The one with the highest status was none other than the Queen Mother. She is equivalent to a queen bee and is the mother of all aberrations. A queen usually won't have much combat strength, but she can depend on the genetics of the life forms she devoured to produce different aberrations. She is like a huge production machine, but she herself is the greatest flaw to their ecological structure. You should know that the higher the rank of the aberrations we kill, the more points we would score. If we can kill a queen. Yana calmly stated, and her words were simple enough. Even ordinary humans could understand what she was trying to get at. Eris at the side had a look of wild anticipation on her face, like she desired nothing more than to storm into a nest and kill a queen now. You are saying? Feng Lin's heart stirred. That's right, we should assassinate a queen. Once we kill her, we will definitely get the highest score. At that time, we will split the points evenly, and as for which among us who can become the top scorer, that would depend on our capabilities. The more other types of aberration we kill, the more points we would get. Yana explained, sharing her idea of splitting the spoils. Feng Lin sank into contemplation. This Yana truly surprised him. He didn't expect a young woman with such a weak physique would actually have such an audacious and incomparably dangerous plan. One couldn't help but say the greater the risks, the greater the returns are. If this plan truly could succeed, becoming the king of the solar system might really be possible. Should he take a gamble? Feng Lin's heart stirred, but he didn't rush to make a decision. His eyes gleamed as he asked, "You know so many things and your plan is also perfect. Why do you still need me?" Yana didn't conceal things from him because she knew if she didn't have a logical explanation, Feng Lin definitely wouldn't take the risk. This plan is extremely dangerous and requires a combat strength on the level of elite cultivators, the stronger the better. With me and my younger sister, our strengths are insufficient. And why you? Because others are not worthy of our trust, and you are the only one currently that met with all the requirements. Yana calmly stated. Do you trust me that much? Feng Lin didn't think that it would be so simple. After all, you saved our lives, and from a certain perspective, we definitely trust you more than other strangers who are taking the exam. We have already cooperated once before, and you also have some understanding about both of us. Wouldn't that become the basis of the second time of our cooperation? No. Yana lightly smiled as she counterasked. From her words, Fenglin also smiled. He no longer hesitated. Fine then. Great fortune comes with the danger. Let's do it. Chapter 225, Mother Nest. The mountain peaks were of different height, forming a wave-like resemblance from above. The atmosphere was completely silent as there were no signs of life at all in this area. A giant cave appeared before their eyes like a black hole that led straight to the abyss. Occasionally, strange roars would ring out from within. It was like there was a bunch of hellish demons within that would lunge out at any moment, devouring any humans nearby. Fenglin and the two sisters were hidden at the side, staring at the dark cave. They had heavy looks on their faces. Fenglin then asked, "This is the mother nest of the aberrations?" "That's right." Yana nodded. Because of the danger aberrations posed to ordinary humans, the experts of interstellar humans would monitor the Azura planet on fixed intervals. One was to monitor the breeding rate of the aberrations, and secondly, to monitor the death row criminals. These death criminals all committed unforgivable sins in the universe. Exile to Azura planet was the harshest and most extreme sentence in the southern Milky Way galaxy. Aberrations were the dominant life form here, thus, the death row criminals who are weak would all be devoured. Only those evilest, vilest humans would be sent here. These criminals wreaked great havoc and destruction in the outside world, and among them, there is no lack of intelligent people. Even embedding a microchip in their bodies wasn't an insurance. No one knew when these criminals would break the code of the microchips and fool the overseers. Hence, they had to use real-time monitoring systems like satellites. If these intelligent criminals started from zero and opened the technological tree, they might be able to make use of the resources on Azura planet to go step by step from the primitive era into the agricultural era, industrial age, science and technology era. In the end, they might even be able to create spaceships of the lowest tier and escape this planet. Given how vast the universe is, everything was possible. After all, there had been a precedence of such cases happening, allowing the criminals to escape. In order to avoid such cases, the situation on Azura planet is monitored constantly via the optical AI of the Interstellar Humanity Court. I made use of hacker technology and found a hole in their defensive firewall, and I managed to sneak in and obtain first-hand info. Although she made it sound simple and casual, Fenglin naturally wasn't stupid enough to casually believe that her methods were so simple. The Interstellar Court was the law enforcer of interstellar humanity, with influence spanning across the universe. Their AI firewall was naturally one of the strongest, yet she actually managed to hack into it? This Yana definitely could be considered a peak-level hacker in the universe. Many thoughts flashed through Fenglin's mind, but his expression didn't change as he patiently listened. Yana continues to speak, and according to the latest info, this is one of the 30 small-scale mother nests on Azura planet. Small-scale mother nest? Fenglin asked. That's right. Those aberrations would gather around their queen and form a mother nest akin to an ant colony. They would hunt prey around the area to continue living. According to the information I have, currently on Azura planet, there's one gigantic-scale mother nest, 3 large-scale mother nest, 10 medium-scale mother nest, and 30 small-scale mother nest. For the sake of caution, let's start by targeting one of the small-scale mother nests first and kill a queen here. The queens of small-scale mother nest would usually be reproductive machines and have very weak combat prowess. It's just that their aberration guards would be very troublesome to deal with. The mother nest was right before them. In order to prevent alerting the aberrations, they communicated by mental transmissions. After hearing Yana's words, Fenglin nodded. This was not a bad idea. In the mother nest, other than the aberration queen, the aberrations can be divided into a few different types. The facehuggers, messenger types, soldier types, prowler types, guard types, each of the different types would net us a different amount of points when we kill them. For example, the small facehuggers are the embryonic forms of the aberrations. They don't have much combat strength, and we won't gain any points even if we kill them. For messengers, they are creatures that move with their four limbs. They have extremely quick speed but weak combat strength. Hunting one would net us 1 point. For the most common aberrations that are known as the soldier types, killing one would net us 10 points. For prowlers that are ranked higher than the soldiers, their speeds are even faster compared to messengers, and they have excellent stealth abilities, along with high intelligence. Killing one would net us 100 points. And for the last type, the guard types, they are loyal guards of the aberration queens. Killing one would net us 1,000 points. As for queens, they can be classified as small queens, medium queens, large queens, and giant queens. For small queens alone, killing one would net us 10,000 points, and for every rank up in the queen category, the difference in points we can gain is 10 times the previous amount. But what is more terrifying is that after a small queen evolved into a medium queen, they would no longer just have reproductive capabilities, they would have elementary combat strength that would increase unceasingly as they continue to evolve. As for the giant queen, it's the strongest creature on this planet. If we can kill it, we would be able to gain 10 million points. If we truly can kill that creature, we would really be the king of the solar system, but it's extremely difficult to accomplish this. You must know that giant queens have a strength level equal to grand completion phase of elite cultivators. Their combat prowess is incomparably terrifying. For the exam candidates who participate in the second round this time, none of us will be able to do so. Maybe, only those supreme geniuses in the universe would have some hope to accomplish this. We won't be thinking too much about this. Now, we will start by luring out the lower ranks aberrations like the messengers and soldiers, and keep hunting them to gain points. After they grow suspicious, they will start sending more forces out. Once the mother nest is relatively empty, we will enter it to assassinate the small queen here. Yana revealed her battle plan, listing out the steps. There were no loopholes to this. Fenglin silently nodded at her intelligence after he heard that. Truly, one would always walk the path that suited one the most. This Yana was as expected of a cultivator that walked on the Athena mythological path. Her wisdom far surpassed ordinary humans. This idea seemed dangerous, but it was very doable and had a very high chance of success. Right. Fenglin nodded in agreement. But before they could say anything more, Eris interjected, "Pay attention, aberrations are coming out." Fenglin and Yana instantly turned their gazes over. They could hear ear-piercing noises come out from the interior of the cave. It felt like 10,000 bats were screeching beside their ears. The sound made them feel as though nails were squirmed in their brains. Stabilize your state of hearts and minds. These aberrations are extremely sensitive to the fluctuations of aura. If you are in a disturbed state of mind, they will immediately sense it, and our positions would be revealed. Yana transmitted her thoughts to her sister and Fenglin. Fenglin and Eris instantly calmed themselves down. Very soon, from the interior of the dark cave, 10 aberrations crawled out. They had compound eyes that scanned everything around them. They also sniffed the air with their noses, trying to sense if there were any strange smells. All of these were within Fenglin's anticipations. They completely retracted their auras, leaking nothing at all. After that, these aberrations split up in 4 directions as they went off to hunt for food. In the depths of the mountain, shrill cries filled with terror and despair rang out. Feng Lin's group simply waited at the side. They had their eyes fixed on 3 soldier-type aberrations that were moving closer to them. Before the soldier type, 6 messenger types were leading the way. Feng Lin and the sisters exchanged glances and proceeded according to their plan. Eris intentionally leaked a trace of her aura. Howl. The 6 messenger types instantly sensed something and let out excited howls that resembled dogs. 3 of the soldier types also grew excited as they smelled the scent of a human. For them, humans were a type of very weak creatures, but had high intelligence and contained plenty of nutrients. They were one of the favorite foods of aberrations. The 9 aberrations hurriedly moved, wanting to surround Eris. They were like hungry wolves that had spotted a prey. With a scream, a female figure flashed and sped toward the narrow valley far away. Seeing their prey frantically running away, heat filled the gazes of the aberrations. Drool leaked from their thorny tongues as they chased after. The speed of the aberrations was very quick. The 6 messenger types ran on the walls while the 3 soldier types followed behind them, preparing to attack. However, the speed of the female they were chasing wasn't slower than them at all. They actually weren't able to catch up with her after chasing for some time, and sounds of their panting could be heard. But when she was about to reach the valley and could finally escape, that female actually slowed her steps. She didn't seem nervous at all. She turned and smiled teasingly at the aberrations. The aberrations weren't capable of emotions, but their instincts told them something was wrong. Pata. Pata. The sounds of 2 other sets of footsteps rang out. The aberrations turned only to see a human male of average stature wielding a metal cudgel in his hands. This human male was also staring teasingly at them, and there was a weak human female following behind him. Shriek. Roar. The 9 aberrations roared with anger. They didn't think too much and immediately pounced toward the delicate-looking female human. Tyrannical aura equipment. Eris roared in rage. The wind moved. Tyrannical aura as thick as oil radiated from her, causing a huge storm that enveloped her within, acting as an indestructible armor. Tyrant rush punch. Eris's body shot out like a fired arrow. Tyrannical aura gushed forth from her fists, and they were akin to hammers slamming out with the intent to crush everything. The 9 aberrations were hit one after another, and all of them fell back in retreat. Bang, bang, bang. The giant metal cudgel was like a gigantic pillar crushing 3 of the heads of the messenger-type aberrations. Eris didn't hesitate. She was like a ferocious tiger lunging over, punching out in all directions and causing those aberrations to scream in misery. These aberrations were born with sharp fangs and huge claws. But their attacks did no damage to Eris's tyrannical aura equipment. Even their highly acidic saliva couldn't injure her. A savage aberration was akin to a weak and harmless lamb before Eris and could only be trampled on and bullied by her. Feng Lin naturally wouldn't show mercy as well. His cudgel waved around as a powerful force blasted out. Under the power of his cudgel, piles of mangled flesh could be seen everywhere. The cooperation between the 3 of them was extremely smooth. Yana gave the plan, Eris as the bait, and Feng Lin as the executor. Their combination was truly perfect. The narrow valley became a natural pocket, trapping the 9 aberrations within. They had no way to escape and were all killed off. Feng Lin sliced the thumbs of the 9 aberrations off and split the parts equally to the 3 of them. 1 soldier type and 2 messenger types for each person. Just like this, each of them gained 12 points. Earlier, Feng Lin killed 4 soldier types. Currently, he already had a total of 52 points. It had only been a short while, but the efficiency rate couldn't be considered low. But what made him feel strange was that after the sisters had obtained their spoils, they actually took out a small knife and started to carve out a meat lump from a certain part of the bodies of the aberrations. The two sisters didn't seem to care about their images at all. They directly consumed the lumps of meat as blood sprayed when they bit into it. Staring at Feng Lin's puzzled gaze, Eris had a look of satisfaction. You don't know about this. The hypothesis of the aberrations is the organ responsible to collect the gene essence of other biological creatures. They naturally wouldn't be corroded by the acidic bodily fluids of the aberrations. This piece of meat is the only edible part of them. Not only are they tasty, but they also contain the genetic essence of the various biological creatures. It's a food item of great nutritional value. At the side, she laughed like she was pulling a prank on Feng Lin. A moment later, she tossed the lump of meat over. The meat reeked of an intense bloody smell, causing people to retch in disgust. Feng Lin frowned, but he stared at Eris's expression. It was like she was preparing to watch how he would reject this. His spirit force scanned the meat and discovered that this hypothesis didn't have any other bizarre auras on it. He decisively swallowed it in a single gulp. Contrary to his expectations, the smell of blood was almost non-existent when he placed the meat in his mouth. It actually tasted incredibly juicy and transformed into currents of warmth that flowed around his body, giving him a sense of comfort. Great amount of nutrients flooded his body, allowing him to recover his physical strength rapidly. Feng Lin activated transforming energy into qi as he digested and refined the nutrients. Genetic potential plus 58%, plus 58%, plus 58%. Feng Lin couldn't help but be startled. Aberrations were a plague-type biological weapon, yet this part of their flesh was actually so delicious. He also understood the purpose of the monster's hypothesis. They were packed with nutrients and could be an alternative to food. With these lumps of meat and clean water, they could stay on Azura planet for extended periods of time. The problem of hunger and thirst was completely solved. Feng Lin thought deeper into it. This hypothesis was able to collect the gene essence of the various biological creatures. They had such a wondrous effect, and he wondered if he could do some research on them and produce genetic potions with a certain unique effect. Genetic potions needed various rare ingredients in the universe. He supposed that this gene hypothesis could also qualify as a rare ingredient. In any case, these thoughts were for the future. Right now, Feng Lin could only temporarily set these thoughts aside. For the next half of the day, he cooperated with the Greek sisters and reenacted the earlier scene again and again, luring the aberrations out to ambush them. Gradually, their cooperation grew more seamless. One was the killer, one was the bait, one was the lure. It was a great success. Even if the three of them split the spoils, they would obtain about 920 points. Feng Lin's points reached 972 in total, almost reaching 1,000 already. They acted with extreme ruthlessness and decisiveness. And at this moment, the mother nest also seemed to sense that something was wrong. Countless tentacle monsters that resembled facehuggers rushed out like the tide, searching everywhere in the surroundings. There were also different types of strange-looking aberrations that came out, frenziedly searching for unusual smells in the air. Feng Lin's group hid inside a pit they had dug earlier, burying themselves deep within the earth, not revealing any trace of their smell or auras. After all the aberrations in the mother nest exited, they would use this chance to enter and assassinate the queen. However, before the mother nest was emptied out, those aberrations and facehuggers gradually returned into the dark cave, no longer revealing themselves. The atmosphere of the dark cave reverted to its earlier stillness. What was going on? The three of them were puzzled. Why did the commotion in the mother nest seem to have ceased completely? Feng Lin glanced at the sky. He suddenly discovered the reason why as he pointed his finger over. Quickly look. In the sky, The giant star that was akin to a sun sank in the horizons, drowning this planet into darkness. The bitter chill started permeating the atmosphere as a bone-chilling coldness seeped into everything on the planet. A cold wind gusted by. Even the three of them couldn't help but shiver. Night on Azura planet has arrived and the temperature will plunge to a negative 100 degrees soon. Those aberrations won't be able to resist the cold. They don't dare to venture outside or their blood would be frozen completely in their veins. Yana spoke with a heavy expression. Plans would never be able to catch up with changes in the actual situation. Now, their plan to lure the aberrations out had failed. Therefore, they could only choose to endure this night and start again tomorrow. Today, they just arrived at Azura planet and had to entangle with those death criminals. All of those had wasted too much time. The time was insufficient. Yana had a look of reluctance on her face now that her plan had failed. She gritted her teeth but was helpless to do anything. There was a limit to men's abilities. They couldn't contend against the changes provided by the heavens. The bitter chill brought by the night permeated the atmosphere. The three of them could only leave here helplessly and try to search for a place to spend the night before trying again tomorrow. At this moment, Feng Lin's footsteps suddenly halted. He turned toward the mother nest as his heart stirred. He spoke, "The aberrations aren't able to resist the bitter cold and would sink into hibernation. At this time, the defense on the mother nest is the weakest. Why don't we enter now and make things chaotic, assassinating the Queen Mother in a single blow?" He offered an extremely bold suggestion. He wasn't willing to wait another moment longer. If they could kill the Queen earlier, they would have more time to collect more points. So why not? What? You want to use this chance to enter the cave? Eris spoke in shock. Have you gone mad? This bitter chill is killing us. Won't we be severely impacted? We can't even unleash 50% of our power in such conditions. Are you not courting death by entering the mother nest now? Upon facing her doubts, Feng Lin smiled. We are all cultivators, so our vitality stats are high enough to withstand the cold to some degree. These aberrations are not transcendent creatures. Under the bitter cold, their vitality force will sink to their lowest point as they enter hibernation mode. Since this is the case, this timing is actually our greatest advantage. Although all the aberrations are now in the cave and we can't lure them out, this is in fact their weakest moment. We might as well enter the cave to kill the Queen. Eris still wanted to rebut, but Feng Lin continued to speak. His voice was filled with resolve. It was clear he had already come to a decision in his heart. Plans will always remain plans. As to what we should do, we should react to changes in the circumstances and improvise accordingly. After all, if we don't enter the tiger's den, how can we steal the tiger's cub? Chapter 226, Entering the Tiger's Den, Stealing the Tiger's Cub. His words were like gold scattering onto the ground. Evidently, Feng Lin had already made up his mind and wouldn't change his decision. Plans would never be able to match up to actual circumstances. He deeply understood the importance of improvisation. Because of the lack of time, their plan that was supposed to be executed in the day had failed. Hence now, they needed to improvise. If not, they would waste a night's worth of time for nothing. When they tried again tomorrow, be it success or failure, another day would be gone. There were only 10 days for the second round. Time was very limited. He had to seize all available time to obtain as many points as possible to make up for the difference between him and the other candidates that formed teams. Although Feng Lin didn't walk on the Athena mythological path, and he didn't have such monstrous brainpower as Yana, he understood this very well and had his own ideas. Not getting the tiger's cub if we don't enter the tiger's den? Although Feng Lin had explained his reasons, when Eris heard it, she instinctively rebutted. Do you think this place is as simple as a tiger's den? This is a mother nest of the aberrations. It is a location much more terrifying compared to a tiger's den. However, Feng Lin simply looked at her and said a sentence which she couldn't refute. But we are not ordinary humans, are we? That's right. Although the mother nest of aberrations was more dangerous than a tiger's den, they were not ordinary humans after all. If they were so fearful of everything, why the hell did they cultivate for? Eris intentionally wanted to go against Feng Lin, but this time, she couldn't find any reason. She could only cast a seeking for help glance at her sister Yana. However, Yana's next sentence caused Eris to widen her eyes in shock. You are right. Now, this is truly the time where the defense of the mother nest is at its weakest. If we enter now, our rate of success would be even higher than if we entered in the day. The space inside the mother nest can help us to resist the cold as well. After hearing Feng Lin's words, Yana's brows were furrowed as she entered deep in contemplation. Her brain power revolved quickly, and she soon saw the merits of this plan. Hence, she agreed with Feng Lin. Elder sis, seeing that her elder sister was also supportive of this idea, Eris panicked. Yana shook her head. Eris, although our plan earlier was good, it couldn't catch up to the changes in the situation. We have to improvise to achieve what we want. The changes in the heavens and earth are boundless. No matter how good a plan is, it wouldn't be perfect. No matter how high a human's intelligence is, it ultimately cannot win against the law of the heavens. She voted for Feng Lin's suggestion, and this matter was settled just like that. Eris had no way to refute her sister. She could only cast Feng Lin an infuriated glance, and her expression was filled with reluctance. As expected of Yana, her intelligence far surpassed the majority of humans. After agreeing with Feng Lin, she thought of many details instantly to optimize this plan. Although the bitter chill of the night would cause the defense of the mother nest to be at its slackest period, there's no need for us to be in such a hurry. Right now, Azure planet just entered the start of the night cycle phase, and the temperature has not gone down completely yet. The aberrations had yet to retreat to the deepest level of the cave, and are still very vigilant. If we enter now, we would be throwing ourselves into the net. Let's only enter when the temperature has plunged to its lowest point, and after that, we will use our strongest attack and aim for the aberration queen together, assassinating her. Once we succeed, the dragon's head would be separated from its body. The situation in the mother nest would definitely descend into chaos, and by then, we can hunt for points as much as want to. Her calm words were filled with icy killing intent. Annihilation plan, edition, aberration? Feng Lin mumbled. Right. Yana replied. The three of them then nodded in agreement. The boundless darkness flowed forth from the sky like waves from the ocean, engulfing the entire land. Along with it, the bitter chill that came from the plunging temperature manifested as well. Feng Lin's group dug a huge pit and hid there like groundhogs. They sealed the entrance and only left some holes to allow air to pass through, just enough for them to breathe. They were like mature hunters, enduring the vilest environment to wait for the perfect moment to snare their prey. Although they were covered by many layers of soil, the cold wind was still able to penetrate the pit. Yana was someone with a very weak physique. The colder the temperature was, the more difficult it would be for her to endure. She was like a tender flower inside an ice storm. She shivered violently as her pale face turned even paler. However, she didn't complain in the slightest at all, displaying a resolute determination that couldn't be seen from her fragile appearance. As for that brash and violent Eris, she also displayed a tender side of hers. She hugged her sister in her embrace and used her body warmth to warm Yana up. Intense waves of tyrannical aura gushed forth from her and became corporeal, forming a barrier that protected Yana from the bitter wind. This made Yana's countenance much better looking. Feng felt puzzled in his heart. Athena was a very powerful god in Greek mythology. Since this Yana walked on her mythological path, why was her body so fragile? But this was a private matter of Yana after all, he wouldn't pry too deeply. Feng didn't pay too much attention to it after this. He closed his eyes and sat cross-legged, circulating his qi and blood to ward off the cold. In this hellish temperature that was over a -100 degrees, even metal would turn to ice and would shatter into pieces when they fell onto the ground. There was no need to mention about the fragile human flesh. A faint jade luster appeared on the surface of Feng skin, acting like a formless layer of isolation that blocked the chill. The cold wasn't able to invade him the slightest. He then took out a gene hypothesis from one of the aberrations he had killed and consumed it. The meat lump transformed into currents of warmth that flowed through his body like lava. Genetic potential plus 58%, plus 58%, plus 58%, increasing by a total of 290% in one shot. Feng didn't hesitate. His perception locked onto the gene that he had always ignored before. Genetic energy flowed into it. Gene, adrenaline gene. Grade, perfect grade basic gene. Strengthening tally, 4. Ability, bullet time, secretion of adrenaline, stimulating the acceleration of thinking. He strengthened the adrenaline gene to 4 points, extending the duration of bullet time from 20s to 80s. Every bit of strength was important as they were going to enter the mother nest. He had to adjust his physical and mental state to their strongest peak. As for the principles of having no regrets, it was precisely because in the past, Feng wasn't sure of what the adrenaline gene could evolve into. This was why he didn't strengthen it further. If he added too many points, even if he regretted it in the future, he wouldn't be able to do anything. Hence, Feng had never added points to the adrenaline gene after awakening it. But now, he couldn't care too much about the consequences. Strengthening the adrenaline gene to 4 points was a number that was neither high nor low. It should be suitable. In the future of his evolutionary path, if the adrenaline gene was useless, having 4 points in it wouldn't be considered a waste even if he had to abandon it. However, if the adrenaline gene could be evolved into higher-tiered genes that were suitable for him, there was naturally no problems in enhancing it even more. After all, the stronger a gene was, the more would its requirements be in regard to increasing the strengthening tallies of its basic components. This was the most universal rule of the cosmos. Accumulation and being well prepared was the key to success. The number of points added to a gene could be considered accumulation. The more points there were, the deeper the foundation was. Only with enough accumulation would the gene be able to undergo a sufficiently wondrous evolution. This was also how Feng, despite awakening 2 of the lowest grade basic genes, managed to evolve them to a variant grade primeval gene like the stone monkey gene. By accumulating enough droplets, enough water would form floods that could drown everything. Gene evolution followed the same theory. Time flowed by and it was now the middle of the night. There were no hints of life on Azura planet at all. Almost all of the monsters were in hibernation. Feng opened his eyes. Everything was prepared, they were only lacking the east wind. 1. During these hours, the 2 sisters also did some preparations and now, they were wearing an interstellar warrior's battle suit. Clearly, they had interspatial equipment with them. These battle suits were able to isolate both heat and cold, but the patterns on them seemed slightly strange. There was a bizarre-looking silver-colored star symbol, and the battle suits were radiating bloodthirsty aura. Feng tactfully didn't probe further. No matter where these battle uniforms originated from, it had nothing to do with him. The 3 of them nodded to each other and walked out from the pit. There was no moon on Azura planet. During the night, the darkness was reigning, and nobody could see their fingers even if they were stretching out their palms before them. The atmosphere of the mother nest was so gloomy that it was terrifying. The entrance to the cave was like a gigantic maw wanting to swallow people whole. Swish! A gust of cold wind blew by, causing the three of them to shiver despite the protective battle suits and Feng Lin's constitution. In this temperature of -100 degrees, even water vapor would be crystallized, turning into frost and ice. Everything was covered by thick layers of frost. The devil's den was right before their eyes, boundlessly dark and extremely deep. The cold wind emitted low-frequency noises akin to roars. Feng Lin's group cautiously entered. The tunnel felt extremely cold and gloomy, and a sour rotten smell that could cause one to puke permeated the atmosphere. The three of them also weren't ordinary humans. They frowned slightly, but didn't hesitate to continue moving in. Sha, sha, sha. As they proceeded deeper into the cave, clicking noises rang out, causing them to feel somewhat irritated. Shush! Feng Lin's spirit force gushed forth. He suddenly made a silencing gesture by placing his finger on his lips and pointing upward. The Greek sisters looked up and had to hold their breaths. On the ceiling, groups of densely packed monsters were squirming about as they stuck close to each other. Their eyes gleamed with redness and resembled bats. They were none other than the embryonic form of the aberrations, the facehuggers. Their numbers were well above millions, basically countless. The sight of this would cause one's scalp to turn numb. Although Feng Lin and the sisters were cultivators, if they alerted these monsters, they would be engulfed by the unending tides of facehuggers, and it would be almost impossible for them to escape. The three of them retracted all traces of their presence and silently departed, moving into the depths of the mother nest. The inner structure of the mother nest was like a beehive, extending everywhere. It formed a spatial three-dimensional structure that resembled a maze. The gigantic mountain this place originally was, had completely been dug and tunneled through by the aberrations. Feng Lin's spirit force gushed forth and scanned the surroundings, allowing him to have something like transparent vision. He had a complete understanding of this maze. Nothing could obstruct his vision. Through the many layers of walls, he could sense an extremely powerful life force undulations from a certain direction. That place should be the location of the aberration queen. However, a spiritual scan was different from vision. Feng Lin couldn't be sure until he had seen it personally. He had to get closer before he could tell if his guess was right. "Come with me," Feng Lin signaled. He then led the two sisters in the direction of the queen. "Quickly, look," Yana suddenly called out. In front of them, hanging from the ceilings, half-transparent cocoons with different creatures could be seen. There were messenger types, soldier types, etc. Feng Lin could sense that their mind had entered a state of stillness and they were just like rocks. He actually didn't notice their presence until Yana called out. He and Yana then exchanged glances as an idea formed in his head. Chi, chi, chi. Feng Lin's spirit force transformed into formless small swords that pierced out into the air, stabbing into their minds and killing the lives in the cocoon mentally. Since their minds had died, they naturally died as well. Yana also acted. Her mental energy transformed into golden arrows that destroyed the thought processes of the aberrations in the cocoons. These aberrations were all hibernating. They were like fish on the land, unable to put up any struggle at all. Feng Lin's group could harvest as much as they wanted. Mental-type energies were without form nor substance. They could kill silently, leaving no traces at all. All aberrations were points, and right now, they were being harvested effortlessly. Truly, one could only capture the tiger's cub by entering the tiger's den. However, Feng Lin's group didn't dally. After killing a few more, they headed straight for the queen. Assassinating the queen was the main point, all other things were secondary. The deeper they went into the cave, the higher the temperature was. Apparently, the bitter chill from the outside wasn't able to reach so deep into the cave. Currently, the temperature was around -80 degrees. The cold wind also abated somewhat, making Feng Lin's group resent this instead. This wasn't a good thing for them. With an increase in temperature, it meant that the life activities of the aberrations might surge again, and they would all wake from their hibernating states. If that was the case, their plan to assassinate the queen might end in failure. Feng Lin's group of 3 exchanged mutual glances. They could all see the trepidation and heaviness in the eyes of each other. Just like what they expected, the deeper they entered the mother nest, the more silent the atmosphere was. Even those sounds made by the facehuggers had completely vanished. They felt like countless fearsome monsters were hiding in the dark, waiting for a chance to lunge over and tearing them into shreds. So, a black figure flashed by, so fast that they weren't able to track it with their eyes. Feng Lin instinctively turned and chased after. Now, he could make out a 3-meter-tall aberration that was hiding in the dark. Its entire body was glossy black, perfectly melding into the darkness inside the cave. A pair of eyes were staring ruthlessly at Feng Lin's group, overflowing with savageness. This was clearly a prowler-type aberration. At the next moment, it opened its maw and clearly was preparing to scream. Feng Lin's expression changed. Grow. The metal cudgel in his hand quickly expanded and pierced into the aberration's throat, not allowing it to make any noises. Bang! Eris also didn't hesitate. She jumped over and punched out with hands that were imbued with black-colored tyrannical aura. Her punches were like hammer blows, but she controlled the force in them very well. Although she smashed the aberration into pieces, she didn't alert the other monsters inside the nest. We must have reached the region where the temperature in the cave is the highest. Some of the aberrations are starting to awaken. This must be the inner section of the mother nest, and the aberrations here are all high-level ones. We have to be careful. Their expressions were heavy. They increased their speed and moved directly toward the direction of the queen. The wariness in their hearts was also raised to the maximum. They discovered that in the inner part of the nest, a prowler type would guard every corner. The security here was extremely strict. The 3 of them joined forces and used the swiftest, most silent method to kill the prowlers as they proceeded toward where Feng Lin felt the aberration queen would be. Finally, they saw what they wanted. They entered a spider web-like hole and could see thick tentacles everywhere. A terrifying monster over 10 meters in length coiled upon itself. It had malevolent-looking claws and tentacles. And there also was a giant egg-spawning organ at the area below its stomach that was squirming unceasingly. Kill. Upon seeing the aberration queen, the 3 of them instantly rushed over. The metal cudgel in Feng Lin's hand transformed quickly, becoming a gigantic heaven pillar that smashed down heavily. For Yana, her mental energy transformed into a golden arrow that shot straight into the consciousness of the queen. Eris's tyrannical aura equipment manifested a long spear, wanting to penetrate everything that was before her. The 3 of them unleashed their strongest attacks, wanting to kill the queen instantly and not giving her any opportunity to react. As her life was at stake, the gigantic aberration hurriedly let out a piercing scream. 6 black figures immediately appeared, blocking between the queen and Feng Lin's group. Their bodies were torn to bits and their acidic blood splattered on the ground, causing sizzling sounds to ring out. The attacks were completely blocked by the aberrations who ignored their lives. At the next moment, they discovered that they were now completely surrounded by a group of terrifying black figures. Feng Lin glanced at the surroundings, and his heart couldn't help but sink into the valley. This was a group of aberrations clad in black-colored armor. Their bodies were tall, and their muscles seemed to be filled with explosive violence. Their tough head crowns were as sturdy as shields, and their bodies exuded a devilish charm. They were akin to the most loyal guards protecting their queen. Guard-type aberrations. Chapter 227, Stone Monkey Battles Queen. A group of pitch-black shadows appeared like ghosts, surrounding Fenglin and sisters. They had sharp protruding fangs like blades, heads as tough as shields, and hideous-looking bodies like that of the devils. They surrounded and guarded the aberration queen like the imperial guards, putting their lives on the line. Over 20 aberration guards surrounded them. As the strongest force in the nest, they gave Fenglin and the sisters tremendous pressure. Even if these guards could not use any extraordinary abilities, their vitalities had surpassed 70 and were very terrifying. Fenglin was secretly taken by surprise. Aberrations were really living weapons. It was really beyond one's imagination to just rely on reproductions to produce such terrifying life forms. Screech. The aberration queen's massive body kept twisting as it roared in a piercing manner. The entire mother nest started trembling. Under the lead of the aberration guards, the facehuggers, the messenger types, the soldier types, all of them surged out like tidal waves, wanting to drown Fenglin and the sisters completely. Many mysterious black shadows kept flashing past, licking their fangs and claws in the darkness, waiting for the chance to make a move. They were ready to pounce out at any moment, wanting to tear these fresh blood and flesh into pieces, then swallowing them up. End the battle quickly. The three of them exchanged a glance and immediately came to a decision. The mother nest had been completely alarmed, and there was no longer a need for them to conceal themselves. Countless aberrations woke up from their slumber. If things dragged on for too long, it would be hard for them to leave. The three of them didn't hold back and pounced toward the aberration queen. The queen let out a sharp cry, and an army of aberrations came to block their paths. Big. Fenglin held the metal cudgel tightly with both hands, and the spirit force gushed crazily into it. The metal cudgel grew rapidly in his hands, sweeping away the entire army with great force. 3 sneaking figures had gotten close and were about to launch a sneak attack when they were instantly crushed into meat paste. Their abilities to meld into the environment seemed like a joke before Fenglin's all-pervasive spirit force, being completely ineffective. Tyrant 10 palms. Eris made a move as well, as she put her hands together before her chest. Tyrant aura seethed behind her endlessly, forming a huge human-shaped figure whose palms were also together. Crackle crackle. The palms pressed over like huge walls. When the aberrations were caught, they would instantly be clenched into meat paste. Eris was protecting Yana, who was behind her. Her tyrant aura materialized and formed a huge shell. All over the place, the aberrations would be crushed. It was extremely fierce. Fenglin and Eris both performed harsh killing moves. But the mother nest, being the headquarters for the aberrations, was filled with endless monsters, and there was no end to them. Someone must block the aberrations and then another assassinate the queen. Otherwise, given how there is no end to these aberrations, as time drags on, we'll be trapped here. Yana understood the situation well and spoke in a deep voice. However, all 3 of them fell silent thereafter. The plan was very simple and good, but who was going to be the one to do it? Assassinating the queen was an extremely dangerous task. If there was any carelessness, the person would face the danger of losing their life. Even Eris, who had always been a reckless person with a strong inclination for battle, was silent now. It was not as if she was scared. It was just that her elder sister Yana's battle prowess was insufficient to protect herself, and thus she mustn't leave Yana's side in case Yana were to encounter danger. "Let me do it," Fenglin said calmly, breaking the silence. The Greek sisters' eyes opened wide when they heard that. All along, Fenglin had given them the impression of being cold and rational. they hadn't expected that he would take the initiative. This person was just an interstellar cultivator, right? Where did he get the courage from to assassinate a small aberration queen that was equivalent to an initial phase elite cultivator? Was this person dauntless, or did he have something to back him up? You guys have thought too much. Although Feng Lin couldn't read other people's hearts, he could guess what they were thinking from their surprised expressions. Feng Lin revealed a faint smile, knowing what was appropriate. Although this small aberration queen possessed the battle prowess of an initial phase elite cultivator, he had fought against a number of elite cultivators in the past. His vitality was very high, being at 218, therefore, he would be in no way weaker than them. Even if he couldn't win against the opponent, it shouldn't be too hard for him to leave with ease. He was going to see what this aberration queen was capable of. After understanding the principles behind the mythology deduction method and mythology conclusion method, Feng Lin had comprehended new things. In order to progress on their respective mythological paths, not only must one grasp their genetic powers, but their hearts must also be in sync with the powers in order to release the full potential of the mythological genes. Sun Wukong's entire life needed not to be spoken in 1,000 words nor described in 10,000 words. 3 words would suffice. Fight. Battle. Win. All sorts of thoughts along this line kept flashing past Feng Lin's heart. Feng Lin didn't show any more hesitations and let out a cold bellow, "Open up a path for me." Eris didn't show any hesitation either and instantly made a move. Ares' spear. Eris's hands grabbed out, and her tyrant aura extended to form a pitch-black long spear that pierced out fiercely. It was as if the legendary god of war Ares was seated on the chariot, holding a long spear and piercing through his enemies fiercely as he advanced forth without stopping. The guard types were extremely fast, and they came pouncing over like malicious ghosts. Their claws were sharp, and their long tongues also shot out agitatedly like spears. Pfft. Although Eris's long spear was created from formless tyrant aura, they seemed almost material and extremely sharp. As the spear pierced out, it penetrated through everything. It entered the mouths of those aberrations, piercing through them fiercely and making them appear like a skewer of Tanghulu. 1. Eris's countenance turned slightly flushed, and she exerted force in both her arms like the ancient Hercules. She flicked all the aberrations on the long spear and sent them flying out and falling to the ground, creating a path amongst the army of aberrations. Go! She let out a furious bellow. What a violent woman! Even Feng Lin was taken by surprise by her vicious battle prowess. However, there wasn't time for him to have any exclamations. This was a chance not to be missed. Without any hesitation, he leaped 10 meters into the air like an agile monkey. All of Feng Lin's power was gathered onto his hands, and he raised the metal cudgel high. He arched his back, looking like a monkey in the legends that had wreaked havoc in the heavens. He sent the metal cudgel smashing down, wanting to crush this aberration queen. Boom! The cudgel came down with heavy impact as if the heavenly pillar had collapsed, destroying everything. Stifled sounds rang out in the air. Roar! 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 Loud howls rang out in all directions. When those aberrations saw that their queen was threatened, all of them pounced forth, blocking in front of her with their bodies. Scram! Feng Lin's brows raised and he sent his metal cudgel smashing down heavily. Kacha kacha! The shells of those aberrations cracked and were crushed by the heavy pressure from the metal cudgel. Their bodies turned into meat paste, but they also managed to successfully fend off Feng Lin's attack. Countless aberrations gushed forth like waves. Feng Lin swung his metal cudgel, creating whirlwinds and sending the aberrations flying away. He killed his way toward the queen single-handedly with his cudgel. The queen was hidden in the darkness and Feng Lin hadn't been able to see her clearly prior to this. As he got closer, her appearance was revealed. A hideous-looking monster with many tentacles sat in the cold and humid environment. Her tentacles crossed to form something like a spider web that propped up her huge body. The bulging reproduction organ at her stomach kept on wriggling non-stop, as if living creatures were going to come out at any moment. Screech. The aberration queen sensed that she was in danger and let out a piercing cry. She kept slapping out her tentacles that were covered in the smelly viscous liquid. Feng Lin instinctively struck out with his metal cudgel. The tentacles felt extremely soft and they wrapped around the metal cudgel like pythons, refusing to let go. A massive force came surging over and the tentacles stuck to the metal cudgel like glue, causing it to be incapable of going down any further. Feng Lin's face was flushed red, and he started to compete with the aberration queen in strength. However, this power was extremely huge and endless. Even he wasn't a match for her. Feng Lin was secretly taken by surprise. He rapidly controlled the metal cudgel to shrink its size, breaking free from the restraints. However, the queen's tentacles came wrapping toward him with great flexibility. Regardless of how the metal cudgel changed in size to become bigger or smaller, it would immediately be entangled. The moment they exchanged blows, the queen had displayed her strength to Feng Lin, causing him to be unable to perform his staff arts which had been invincible until now. As expected of the aberration queen that was born at the elite cultivator level. Even though she didn't have much battle prowess, just her innate vitality attribute was already something that ordinary interstellar cultivators wouldn't be able to deal with. It was impractical to want to deal with her within a short period of time. Change. With a thought, the measureless divine metal cudgel rapidly became smaller, turning into a long blade that rested in Feng Lin's hand. Although staff arts and saber arts were different, ancient martial arts were mostly evolved from how people used weapons to kill. Therefore, they were easy to be reconstructed. The 8-trigram palm had been developed through a similar process. Feng Lin used the saber to perform the 8-trigram palm, slashing about with extremely simple moves. However, under his strength, the prowess was tremendous. The queen's tentacles were chopped and landed on the ground as blood splattered. An extremely pungent smell was released in the air. A few drops of blood would occasionally land on Feng Lin, causing him to feel intense pain as if he was burned by fire. The queen's acidic blood was far more corrosive than the blood of other aberrations. Feng Lin stimulated the stone monkey gene and his entire body became as tough as stone. He fended off the acid and his saber pierced out the queen's stomach. That spot, being the reproductive organ, was the weakest and it was also a vital spot for the queen. The queen's body was only 10 meters long and just her reproductive organ alone had taken up a large part of her body. This made her very clumsy and hard for her to move. The queen's 8 sharp claws grabbed out fiercely when her critical spot was being attacked. Her big mouth released a screech that had such an unbearable high pitch. Her sharp teeth also bit fiercely toward Feng Lin. A loud bang rang out. The sharp claws and long saber clashed. As a result, the claws were chopped off and dropped heavily onto the ground. The saber attack was also stopped. In great pain, the aberration queen lashed out her remaining tentacles and sharp claws fiercely, wanting to tear this abominable person who had injured her into pieces. Feng Lin retreated rapidly. Chapter 228, True Meaning of Battle. Tyrant or a Battle Statue. The army of aberrations came in waves, flooding over like the tides. The sisters were engulfed by the tides. But right now, a giant half-transparent divine statue appeared before them, creating a zone of protection around the sisters. Tyrannical aura churned, forming half of the body of the divine statue. This statue was like a battle god from Greek mythology that descended into the mortal world. It had a malevolent look of anger, and its fists were like mountains, punching out in all directions. The impact it caused made the entire ground tremble. Under the heavy fists, those aberrations were crushed to a pulp, blood flowing everywhere. Chi, chi, chi. Yana's eyes gleamed with golden light. Behind her, a pair of hands manifested and had a bow in their grip. The bow fired arrows non-stop, in quantities that were as dense as rain. Those monsters were struck by the arrows, and their eyes dimmed as death overtook them. They just slammed helplessly on the floor. Their consciousness was crushed as they lost all traces of life. However, there were countless aberrations, as many as water droplets in the oceans. The two of them gradually felt that they wouldn't be able to persist much longer. The gathered black-colored tyrannical aura started to dissipate as the battle statue grew more and more illusory. The huge consumption of mental energy caused Yana to turn even paler. Her face was completely white, devoid of blood. When can that brat finish the queen off? Eris panicked as she stared at the depths of the mother nest in frustration. A human and a monster, Feng Lin brandished his metal cudgel and fought frenziedly against the aberration queen. With every strike, a nearby aberration would be reduced to a pile of meat. The more intense the combat was, the calmer his expression would be. A feeling of enlightenment then rose in his heart. What was the true meaning of battle? To fight and to battle. To battle and to win. This was the most suitable combat method for Sun Wukong. This monkey was birthed by the heavens and nurtured by the earth. When it was born, it was extremely weak. And once it had some achievements in its cultivation, it was summoned by the heavenly court but was only given a useless official post that was known as the protector of horses. Hence, due to a fit of rage, it rebelled against the heavenly court, taking all the gods and Buddhas as its enemy, wreaking havoc through the three realms. Not only was it powerful, but it also had no fear in its heart. The more powerful his opponent was, the stronger it would be, allowing it to unleash boundless combat strength. This was the Tao of battle. Feng Lin gradually understood the true meaning of Sun Wukong's mythological path. He had to verify his Tao through real combat. This small-scale queen had a gigantic body and an incomparably terrifying face. Feng Lin directly rushed forward and wielded his cudgel arts, flowing from one stance to the other in an extremely smooth manner. As he slowly understood the true meaning of fight, battle, and win, he also grew more proficient with the great sage cudgel art. He didn't use any particular stances, but allowed the stances to fuse together as he unleashed them according to the need of the moment, allowing him to erupt forth with his full potential. The more intense the combat was, the calmer Feng Lin's heart grew. His heart was like a stretch of clear and still water, there were no ripples within. His cudgel arts grew increasingly violent and slammed out with the force of a storm against the queen, causing explosive sounds to echo out loud. That tough armored shell trembled from the power. Feng Lin's strength grew increasingly mightier and right now, blood could be seen from the gaps between the armored scales of the queen. No matter how much guard types came, all of them died to Feng Lin's cudgel. But Feng Lin knew he couldn't fight a protracted battle. The queen was the mother of all aberrations. Its vitality would surely be extremely high, and it would have strong regeneration abilities as well. Feng Lin's destructive prowess and the queen's regenerative ability both achieved a strange balance. Although his cudgel arts were fierce, he had no way to give the queen a critical death blow. Things are troublesome now. Feng Lin frowned. Not only was the defense of this queen shockingly high, but its vitality was simply too much. Unless he could unleash enough power to cause utter, ruinous destruction of the queen, overwhelming her regeneration, it would be very hard to deal a fatal blow. But this was precisely something Feng Lin, who was proficient in material attacks, lacked. There was not much time left, he had to end this battle as quickly as possible. There was a limit to his physical strength, but the aberrations in the nest seemed endless. If things continued to delay, he would definitely be exhausted to death. Feng Lin's mind rapidly spun as he thought of new ideas, looking at the location the queen was at. The mother nest was a huge cave that had been dug in the interior of a mountain. The queen was located at the deepest layer, and this position was very near to the peak of the mountain. He instantly thought of an idea. His body flashed as he arrived below the queen. Grow! His spirit force frenziedly flowed into the metal cudgel as it lengthened rapidly. Thunder Tyrant Fist. Lightning and thunder crackled in an incomparably violent manner as the aberrations were blasted to the point of retreat. On the surface, this attack looked as mighty as before. But if one paid close enough attention, the punch force was gradually weakening. Earlier, her punches could directly crush the aberrations into piles of meat. But now, her punches could only send the aberrations flying. The claws of the aberrations were broken and looked pathetic, but they remained alive. Unknowingly, the number of aberration corpses under Eris's feet had already piled up so much that it could be a small mountain. Although she was as fierce as a reincarnated war god, she couldn't help but reveal a fatigued expression on her face. Yana panted even heavier than before. She had completely exhausted her mental energy, and her eyes started to dim. Evidently, she had no more strength to continue fighting. Over 1 hour had already passed since they started their plan. The aberration army simply kept throwing bodies at them, surrounding them tightly and quickly exhausting their strength. Did that brat fail? Eris panicked. Within the deepest layer, the sounds of battle still rang out. Clearly, an intense fight was still going on. He only knows how to brag. If this brat cannot kill the queen, and if this situation continues on, we would all be burdened to death by him. Eris shouted. Elder sis, let's leave. No way. Yana thought about it and shook her head. Feng Lin went alone to assassinate the queen. He's leaving his life in our hands. This is a type of trust, we cannot let him down. If we left now, wouldn't we be betraying the alliance we made? Eris's tyrannical aura weakened gradually, and her battle statue's zone of protection also diminished slowly. Their situation was extremely dire. Eris's body trembled violently. She could feel that her strength was almost completely exhausted. That brat has overestimated his own strength. What does this have to do with us? He insisted on entering the nest at this time to assassinate the queen, and caused us to be besieged by the aberration army. By persisting until now, we have already done all we can. If we don't leave at this instant, we would never be able to leave. No. Since we agreed to ally, we are considered comrades. We will advance and retreat at the same time. If not, how can we still talk about trust? Although Yana looked weak on the surface, right now, she displayed an iron-like resolution. She completely disagreed with her sister. Seeing that she was unable to persuade Yana, Eris grew more and more frustrated. She grabbed her sister and carried her while speeding away. Before Mom died, she told me to take good care of you. I will definitely not let you put yourself in danger. Release me quickly. Yana kept on struggling, but she was helpless to resist. Eris's tyrannical aura gushed out, transforming into a giant fist that opened up a path forcefully for them to leave. Upon seeing that the sisters wanted to flee, the aberrations all roared excitedly. They surged forth, with even more momentum. Eris kept slaughtering the aberrations. Her entire body radiated a bloody aura, as she was doing her best to protect her sister. However, the number of aberrations kept increasing, there was no end to them. The two of them could tell that they were going to be completely surrounded in a moment. Shriek. A scream filled with grief and agony rang out from the depths of the nest. The queen was filled with despair. Those aberrations suddenly paused, as if someone had cast a spell which froze them on the spot. At the next moment, they all turned and rushed toward the location of their queen mother without hesitation, completely ignoring the Greek sisters before them. "What's going on?" The Greek sisters stood there in a daze. They glanced toward the chaotic depths of the mother nest as puzzlement appeared on their faces. Could it be? Boom! The earth trembled and a huge deafening blast woke them up from their daze. Right now, they could see a gigantic iron pillar extending up, moving toward the ceiling of the cave. It resembled a huge monster over 10 meters tall that kept shooting upward. The pillar continued to grow rapidly, akin to a heavenly pillar that wanted to pierce the sky. The reproduction organ of the queen was too large. She had no way to move at all. Her body was pinned by the pillar, and a moment later, it pierced through her, breaking her armor. Upon seeing that their queen was in danger, the various aberrations naturally hurried over. Feng Lin activated his stone monkey gene and fortified his defense while unleashing punches with crushing force, forcing the aberrations to retreat. Rumble. The mountain peak crumbled and the entire space shook. The deepest layer of the mother nest that was located at the peak of the mountain now had a hole penetrated through its roof. The gigantic body of the queen was exposed to the frost, which was below a -100 degrees. It let out screams of pain as its body rapidly hardened and ice crystals appeared on her skin. She was quickly being frozen. The bitter chill gushed forth from the roof, and no matter how tough the armored bodies of the aberrations were, they were only ordinary creatures and not transcendent ones. Under the invasion of the cold, even Feng Lin felt his movements growing stiff, let alone them. The aberrations let out screams of terror as ice crystals appeared around their bodies. They were frozen from the inside out. The frost continued extending outward. The aberrations all stiffened and weren't able to move anymore. They collapsed onto the ground and turned into ice statues. As for the aberration queen, she was howling in pain, but the volume of her voice grew smaller and smaller. She too, gradually got frozen into an ice statue. Under the forces of nature, no matter how high a creature's vitality was, they were nothing but a larger ant. Everywhere the cold passed by, the surroundings would become a hell of ice. Feng Lin broke the ceiling of the mother nest using his metal cudgel. He borrowed the force of nature to kill the queen mother. After the queen died, the remaining aberrations that had yet to be frozen hurried and fled for their lives. Without the queen directing them, they could only flee in panic. The Greek sisters saw the demise of the queen aberrations, and they were dumbfounded. Feng Lin slowly walked over. His body was still radiating a baleful aura, and he resembled an Asura that just killed his way out of a battlefield. The queen has already died. Why are you guys not killing the remaining aberrations? Feng Lin asked. After that, he immediately acted, ruthlessly killing the aberrations near him. Each of his blows would finish off an aberration. Only after some time did the Greek sisters come back to their senses. They hurriedly started to hunt the remaining monsters too. The situation in the nest turned into chaos. These originally terrifying aberrations were now like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. They had no way to resist at all and were easily killed. Large batches of facehuggers died one group after another the instant the queen was killed. For some of the lower-graded aberrations, under the dual shock of their queen's demise and the cold, they were completely helpless and couldn't fight back. After just a short period of time, the ground was littered with the corpses of the aberrations. The ones doing the attacking and defending reversed instantly. Feng Lin and the two sisters were like tigers hunting their prey, killing many of the aberrations with the ease of pulling out weeds. All of these were points for them. The more points they had, the better their scores would be. This was simply like a banquet for points collection. Although they were taking lives, Feng Lin's group didn't hesitate. aberrations were a type of terrifying biochemical monsters that hunted the lives of others to survive. In pangs of hunger, they could even eat their kin. There were no points in leaving such monsters alive. In any case, killing lives were actually saving lives. The three of them naturally showed no mercy. It was like they didn't know fatigue and grew numb to the killing and harvesting. They didn't even know how much time had passed by. Corpses were everywhere in the mother nest, and the rotting smell in the atmosphere intensified. Yet, they felt satisfaction in their hearts. All of these monsters were points and they were harvesting them. The remaining aberrations fled frenziedly in panic. The other aberrations all seemed to have sensed something as screams and roars filled the mother nest. They were running with their lives on the line. Feng Lin's group followed closely behind the aberrations as they hunted to their heart's content. Finally, daylight could be seen streaming through in the distance. The sun had risen. Chapter 229, Points Seizing Competition. 1 Small-Scale Queen, 30 Guard-Types Aberrations, 60 Prowler-Types Aberrations. The corpses of aberrations piled on the ground, akin to a small mountain. Their blood dyed the surroundings red, as the strong acidity in their blood caused many holes on the ground. There was almost no space on the ground for them to stand on. Feng Lin's group of 3 gathered here and started to count the corpses. In total, they received 46,780 points. This was an astronomical amount that far surpassed what they would gain if they hunted alone. As expected, the more audacious someone was, the more fortune they would gain. After completely killing the aberrations inside the mother nest, they occupied the entire mountain while ignoring the few aberrations that were lucky enough to flee. A night of effort generated great returns for them. This amount of points far exceeded one's imaginations. No matter how calm Feng Lin and the other 2 were, they all felt a sense of suddenly becoming rich overnight. After slicing the thumbs of all the aberrations, they placed and stacked them up. All of these were valuable trophies for the winners. Next, the problem was how they should split this. The 3 of them fell silent. Feng Lin wasn't in a hurry to split the loot. He silently surveyed the 2 sisters as a look of pondering flashed in his eyes. Even for blood brothers, accounting of their respective property had to be done carefully. The fairest way to split the loot would be to set the criteria on the amount of effort each of them had put in instead of splitting them equally into 3 parts. If they split it equally, this would already have lost the principle of fairness. He intentionally didn't say anything because he wanted to see clearly what the personalities of the 2 sisters were. If their personalities were not up to his standards, there would no longer be a need for him to cooperate with them in the future. Earlier, when they had been in danger, the words spoken by the sisters had all been heard by Feng Lin. In any case, they were just strangers. Before a certain death situation, it made sense for them to flee. Although he could understand their choice in fleeing, it was still tough for him to accept it. But the 2 of them truly did help Feng Lin a lot. Feng Lin decided to give them one more chance and see what they planned to do next. If they wanted to split the loot fairly despite the fact that their contribution wasn't as great as his, he knew what his decision would be. They could scram as far as they could. Feng Lin coldly looked at the side, waiting for the 2 sisters to make the choice. Let's split these equally. Staring at the trophies on the ground, Eris's eyes glowed brightly as she spoke. No, Yana calmly rejected. We will split the loot into 5 portions, 3 portions, and 2 portions out of every 10. Feng Lin will take 5, Eris will take 3, while I will take 2. What? Why? Eris was clearly unhappy. The 3 of us have all put in effort. Why can't we split this equally? We can't split it like that. Yana shook her head. The capable ones should get more. If we split this equally, it would be too unfair to Feng Lin. This time around, The majority of aberrations in the nest were killed by Fenglin. Hence, he ought to gain half of the loot. If it wasn't for him breaking the ceiling and allowing the bitter chill from the night to seep in, it would be impossible to cause so many casualties in the mother nest, which even led to the death of the aberration queen. The two of us only covered him by fighting outside the deepest layer. Our efforts cannot be compared to his. I came up with the plan, but because my combat strength isn't high enough, I'll only get 20% of the loot. And in order to protect me, Eris, you didn't really put too much effort in slaughtering the aberrations. Hence, you should only get 30%. Yana calmly spoke in a just manner. This rationality showed that she was truly wise. And it wasn't simply only her intelligence that was high. Her attitude was fair and just. This was the correct method to maintain a fragile alliance. Fenglin silently nodded. He had a much better impression of Yana. Although her combat prowess wasn't high, her abilities had to do with the mental and spiritual aspects. Moreover, she had both wisdom and intelligence, allowing her to come out with several strategies. She truly proved to be a great help. Seeing her elder sis Yana say this, Eris didn't say anything despite feeling reluctance in her heart. Next was the division of spoils. Yana took out a golden bottle with ancient Greek patterns on it. She turned the opening of the bottle toward the trophies, and a moment later, the pile belonging to her and her sister was absorbed into it as they vanished from sight. The bottle was actually an interspatial equipment. Eris stared at Fenglin as she snorted. Fenglin's share was 50% of the spoils, thus, the number of thumbs were so many that they stacked up like a small mountain. It was basically impossible for one man to carry so many with him. So what if he got more of the loot? He wouldn't be able to bring them away. Only our astrology bottle can do that. In the end, you will still need our help, and I will definitely extort him later on. Eris gave a sneaky laugh, wanting to see Fenglin beg them for their help. She was like a weasel that had successfully stolen a chicken. Fenglin shook his head. Truly, this Eris fit the Chinese idiom big chest no brains. Her killer twin peaks were lethal weapons, but all her thoughts were so transparent on her face. It was way too easy to read her. At this moment, Yana spoke with the intention to help in her heart. You won't be able to bring away these trophies. We have an interspatial equipment with us. Do you need our help? Interspatial equipment? Fenglin glanced at the golden bottle in her hand as he contemplated. That seemed to be a very wondrous, mythological equipment. He felt some sense of familiarity when he glanced at it. But at the next moment, his heart stirred. Didn't he have something like this too? No need. Fenglin smiled, tactfully rejecting Yana's help. You don't know what's good for you. Eris furrowed her brows as she coldly glanced over. My sister wants to help you because she is kind, yet you didn't know what's good for you and refused her help. Fine then, I want to see what you'll do. Interspatial equipments are extremely rare, how can they be something you have? She coldly snorted, but at the next moment, her eyes widened in shock. Fenglin's right hand waved as a giant absorption force generated from his right palm, forming a vortex of absorption. The power of absorption was about 10 times stronger compared to their golden bottles, and the remaining trophies on the ground all flew into the vortex, vanishing from sight. A silhouette of a furnace flashed on Fenglin's palm, appearing incredibly realistic. The Greek sisters stared at each other in shock. After that, their eyes flashed with curiosity and bewilderment as they glanced at Fenglin. They felt as though he was covered in layers of mysteries. They weren't able to see him clearly. Earlier, that absorption force seemed to belong to an interspatial equipment that had a higher grade compared to their astrology bottle. One must know that this golden bottle was something their irresponsible father had left behind for them. it could be considered a mythological treasure that was extremely rare in the solar system. Firstly, this Feng Lin had a magical cudgel, and next, he even had a mythical spatial treasure. From the information they had on him, he was merely a low-grade clansman of the Feng clan on Earth. How could he have so many treasures? This truly caused them to be bewildered. Could it be that his true background was the ancestral Feng clan? Many thoughts flashed in the hearts of the two sisters. You guys are thinking too much. Feng Lin laughed, but didn't try to explain. His interspatial treasure was none other than the pill concoction furnace he had obtained from the remnants of the Furnace Immortal sect on Mars. Because he had no way to practice alchemy yet, he had always neglected this treasure. It was only until he saw the two girls using an interspatial equipment did he remember about it. Although the pill concoction furnace was temporarily useless to him, it had its own internal space and could be used as an interspatial equipment. Before this, he had been using his foldable flying shuttle to store items, however, that was too conspicuous. This pill concoction furnace had completely fused with him. Thus, it was much more convenient to use. Now that he had found out another function of his treasure, Feng Lin silently mused that this trip to the Azure planet truly wasn't a wasted one indeed. He had many returns from this trip. Other than the trophies, he also gained many gene hypotheses of the aberrations. All of these were precious materials that could only be harvested from aberrations. They were able to replenish one's nutrients and strength. Among them, the most precious one would be a gene hypothesis with the size of a human head. It was harvested from none other than the small-scale queen. The aberration queen could be compared to an elite cultivator and barely considered a transcendent creature. Hence, the gene hypothesis from her was naturally extremely valuable. Feng Lin naturally didn't hesitate and took it for himself. At this moment, dawn on Azure planet had arrived. The rising sun radiated its rays of warmth, cascading down on everything. The temperature soon rose to over 50 degrees, and the heat started to get unbearable. After Feng Lin's group scoured the mother nest, they also found their resting places and took a break respectively. Each of them consumed one gene hypothesis to recover the stamina they had expended. Genetic potential plus 48%, plus 48%, plus 48%, surging up a total of 240%. They took a total of 2 hours and recuperated well, back to their optimal states. After that, they started to hunt more aberrations again. The timeline for the second round was very tight. They only had 10 days worth of time, yet there were over 10,000 exam candidates on Azure planet. Although they became rich after decimating a small-scale mother nest overnight, the exam candidates were all geniuses among geniuses and had countless experts among them. There were simply too many intelligent characters. There would soon be people with the same idea. The three of them were only in the lead temporarily. They had to seize as many points as they could in this limited time, securing their lead against others. One must know that this second round of examination wasn't as simple as getting a high score. For the future rounds of examinations, the higher you ranked, the more advantages you would get. The map of Azure planet was already memorized by Yana. She quickly pointed out the location of yet another small-scale nest. Feng Lin used his cloud soar and brought the two of them along with him as he sped over. This time, they used Yana's plan and camped at the side while luring the aberrations out to hunt them. A huge commotion was caused and the mother nest sent out various types of aberrations to check what was wrong. At the start, the lowest-grade facehuggers were sent out. Next, the messenger types and the soldier types. Various aberrations came out, their grades continuously rising. However, it was useless. The aberrations sent out were all easily killed by Feng Lin's group, no matter their number. Finally, a shrill scream rang out from within the mother nest. Seeing that her subordinates kept dying, the Aberration Queen was completely enraged. Now, over 10 armored guard types led 30-plus prowler types out, including other lower-graded aberrations, as they sought to find out what was going on. The time to act is now. Feng Lin exchanged glances with the sister. Their plan had succeeded. For a small-scale mother nest, the number of guard types would at most be 30. Although the capabilities of the guard types were strong, after all, there was a limit to a small queen's life force. Giving birth to 30 guard types was already her limit. Now, since even the core protectors of the queen had been sent out, it was clear that the defenses in the interior of the nest would be greatly reduced. If they didn't enter now, when would they? However, it was impossible for the defenses of the mother nest to be completely empty. The survival of the queen was the inborn instinct the aberrations had in them. No matter what was the lure, there was no way the remaining aberrations in the nest would come out. Since this was the case, there was no point in wasting time. What they should do now was to rush into the nest right away, since the defense was at its weakest point. They rapidly headed straight for the queen's location. Feng Lin's group didn't mask their presence and killed their way in, causing a commotion in the mother nest. Facehuggers gushed forth like the tides. Messengers, soldiers, prowlers, all types of aberrations surrounded them. Tyrannical Aura Battle Statue. Eris shouted. Tyrannical aura gushed forth from her body, causing a gigantic half-body statue to manifest. This statue was clad in a set of armor and resembled a war god from ancient mythologies. The long spear in its hand directly stabbed forth, crushing the aberrations with impunity and piercing through all of them. Soul-destroying golden arrow. Yana's eyes gleamed with golden light as a storm of mental energy blasted out, ripping the consciousness of those aberrations into shreds. The three of them were like unblockable tanks that directly steamrolled their way into the inner sector of the mother nest, heading for the queen's location. "Open!" Eris shouted. Her spear wielded by the divine statue slaughtered a pathway for them despite the army of aberrations that surged over. Feng Lin didn't hesitate and brandished his metal cudgel as he killed his way into the deepest layer. A few moments later, he finally saw the coiled-up queen lying on the ground. The queen felt threatened. With a scream, 3 guards instantly rushed over. Feng Lin's cudgel swept from the left and right, rapidly changing his stances, using a force of 10,000 tons to crush the guards into piles of flesh. The strong armored bodies of the guard types were simply not comparable to Feng Lin's power. His vitality stat was at the very least 3 times that of the guard types. Also, he had body-strengthening type genes. He had an absolute advantage in both speed and strength. Feng Lin could crush them to death in a single blow. After the guards were settled, he rushed at the aberration queen straight. The tentacles and claws of the queen shot over, aiming for him. Feng Lin already had prior experience in fighting against an aberration queen. His cudgel spun about in his hand, drawing circles in the air, easily blocking all the attacks. The spawning organ of the queen kept squirming as she gave birth to terrifying monsters that were akin to devils, wanting to tear Feng Lin apart. Feng Lin couldn't be bothered to entangle with them. He fused as one with his cudgel and revolved rapidly like a top, generating a blast of wind that sent the monsters flying before speeding to the back of the queen. Grow! With a thunderous roar, the metal cudgel extended upward, pushing against the queen's body. It resembled a heavenly pillar that continued stretching toward the sky. All of a sudden, a thunderous boom rang out as the cudgel pierced the queen through. The cudgel continued to extend until a hole was created on the roof from the impact. The entire mountain trembled as stones and rocks flew about. The intense sunlight began streaming in. Under the baking heat of the sun, the queen lost all moisture and cracks began to appear on its body. Although the life force of the aberration queen was great, It was only so due to its strong reproduction capabilities. In fact, the defenses of the queen couldn't even be compared to the smaller aberrations. As the aberration queen died, the other aberrations gradually lost the ability to resist. Feng Lin's group repeated what they did and started a massacre. All in total, they harvested another 47,600 points, further extending their lead in the points-seizing competition among the exam candidates. The three of them took a short break. After their strength recovered, they started to collect points again. Using a day of effort, they destroyed 2 more small-scale mother nests like they didn't know fatigue. And through repeated combat against the aberration queens and their guards, Feng Lin gradually understood the true essence of the great sage cudgel arts. The power he could unleash from it grew increasingly greater. His mind grew clearer as he achieved a miraculous state of heart. He could feel that his heart and mind seemed to have completely fused as one with his genetic powers perfectly. He could fully control them to his heart's desire. Feng Lin understood that he had finally reached the limit of the interstellar cultivator realm. He could no longer grow stronger until he had broken the bottleneck and entered the next realm. As long as he could take that step, he would enter a brand new world. The sky grew darker and darker. Feng Lin abruptly stopped. He smiled lightly. Let's stop here today. We will split up now and gather again tomorrow to hunt the other mother nests. Why? Are you tired due to the constant battles? Yana softly asked. Feng Lin shook his head. No, but I need some time alone to break through. The Greek sisters were both shocked. They didn't expect that he actually dropped such a huge bomb while speaking in such a casual tone. You are going to break through. Feng Lin calmly smiled. His gaze filled with determination and yearning as he stared into the distance. That's right. Now, I will be breaking through to the next level. Chapter 230. If I'm not equal to the heavens, how would I dare to proclaim myself as the great sage? A cloud soared through the horizons in a flash, leaving behind a trail of mist. Feng Lin executed cloud soar and sped away into the distance. The Greek sisters stood on the ground and were long since far away from him, becoming 2 small black dots in his vision. He decided to part with the 2 sisters at this location. They already made arrangements as to where to meet up again tomorrow. Now, Feng Lin was in a hurry to find a quiet and safe place so he could do his best to break through, entering the realm of elite cultivators. At that point, the nature of his life would undergo a qualitative evolution and he would become a transcendent life form. When a cultivator was undergoing a major breakthrough, all their senses would be completely focused. They would be completely ignorant of what was happening in their surroundings. When a cultivator broke through and underwent a transformation, he would be at his weakest then. Once he encountered distraction or attacks from the external world, for light cases, the transcendent force in his body would counter-devour him, and from then on, he would never be able to improve further again. For heavy cases, he would be completely crippled and his life might even be in danger. Although there were cases of monstrous geniuses breaking through during combat, that required supreme talent, great luck, and the most optimal circumstances before they could succeed. If one could break through their realms by patiently cultivating, who would be willing to risk their lives for a dangerous breakthrough in the midst of combat? Wouldn't that be stupid? Evidently, Feng Lin wasn't such a fool. His gaze was like lightning as he scanned the planet below him, clearly noting everywhere he passed by. He had to find a place of absolute safety that could guarantee he wouldn't be disturbed during his breakthrough. From the start until the end, there was no one worthy of his trust. He could only trust himself. They seemed to understand Feng Lin's misgivings. The Greek sisters also tactfully didn't inquire further. Feng Lin's eyes flashed. Up ahead, a majestic mountain could be seen with torrents of steam emitted from it. The smell of sulfur was also present in the air. He didn't retreat, but chose to go nearer instead. He stood at the opening of the volcano as he peered downward. He could see lava churning below as heat waves rose to the sky. The amount of lava was so much that it was like a sea of fire. If one was to fall within, not even their bones would be left. Yet, Fenglin was calmly pondering as he stood at the opening. "Let's go down." Abruptly, Fenglin moved. His hands folded incantations gestures, and a giant furnace manifested in the air, landing on the sea of lava as it floated there. Fenglin slowly floated down the air. The furnace opened up before closing in as his entire person entered the furnace. This giant furnace acted like a giant submarine and dove into the depths of the lava after that. He used the furnace as a tool of transport, diving into the lava. The surroundings of the furnace were completely sealed. It was able to isolate the heat. In this volcano, the lava was like a sea of fire. Other than Fenglin, no one else would be able to enter here. It was naturally the most suitable place to break through. Even if the heavens and earth collapsed on the outside, the commotion wouldn't be able to easily affect him. Fenglin set his heart at ease. He had no more worries. He slowly closed his eyes and entered a state of focus, clearing all distractions. His information appeared in his mind. Name, Fenglin. Vitality stat, 222. Primeval gene, Stone Monkey gene X10, Spirit gene X10. Basic gene, Monkey gene X10, Stone Birth gene X10, Adrenaline gene X4, Mental gene X9, Psychokinesis gene X6, Spirituality gene X8. Genetic potential, 3,688%. After the repeated combats these few days, Fenglin had been assiduously cultivating. His vitality stat had been slowly increasing, reaching a total of 222. The Stone Monkey gene and Spirit gene had both been maxed out. He had already satisfied the conditions of advancing to the next level. However, for a genetic formula to evolve to a higher level gene, a catalyst was needed. One had to comprehend the base nature of their genes. Fenglin held his breath. He was in a state of total concentration. His will entered a state where there were no ripples as the furnace continued sinking inside the lava, as though it had entered a tunnel of bottomless depth. It continued sinking. It was unknown in which direction and when would it reach the end. Nobody knew how long had passed. When Fenglin returned to his senses, he discovered that he had already transformed into a short and furry monkey who just awoke, lying on a huge rock. Long strands of golden fur fluttered in the wind. "I become a monkey again?" "That's right." Fenglin glanced at his surroundings, understanding that he had once again become a stone monkey. This was an illusionscape created from the hereditary memories of the stone monkey gene, but he felt that everything here was extremely real. This place seemed to be a lone island in the center of the sea. Dangerous mountain peaks could be seen in the distance. Waves beat upon the shore as tides rose and fell. This appeared to be a scene of desolation, yet it also gave off the feeling of being in a mortal realm in the mortal world. Fenglin had come here quite a few times in the past, and he no longer felt strange. He started to roam the surroundings and search for the base essence of the stone monkey gene. Unlike before, he discovered that this world seemed to be extremely damaged. After experiencing the invasive divine blood ritual and Amaterasu will, as well as his own great sage will fighting back, this immortal realm was already turned topsy-turvy. An aura of death could be sensed in the atmosphere, and everything seemed extremely silent. This was completely different from the immortal realm filled with life which Fenglin had seen before. He had a feeling. This world was dead. That's right, this world is dead. It no longer exuded vitality and resembled a scene from the apocalypse. Feng Lin felt depressed in his heart. Since this world was destroyed, didn't it mean that the memories would also be destroyed? How would he be able to use his hereditary memories to seek the true essence of the stone monkey gene? Feng Lin was completely stumped. After pacing around for a long time, he still couldn't find the key to break this situation. This world is already broken. Could it be that there's no longer a way for me to comprehend the true essence of my genes? This despairing thought arose in his heart. After some time, he shook his head, tossing aside this notion. Regardless of whether the hereditary memory still existed or not, his stone monkey gene was always present. This was a fact that had never changed. There should be some clues to unlock it, which he had not deciphered yet. Feng Lin inclined his head, lost in thought as he stared at a large black-colored hole up in the sky. This hole was created after his great sage will erupted forth. The hole wasn't repaired despite such a long time had passed. It was extremely conspicuous in the air. Although the great sage will had already dissipated, remnants of the proud and lofty aura of it still permeated the atmosphere. The aura gave off a sense of being completely lawless and defying the heavens, unbridled and arrogant. It was like the aura didn't have the heavens and earth in its sight at all. The sky wasn't able to mask its sight, and the earth wasn't able to understand its heart. Feng Lin calmed his heart down and silently tried to comprehend this remnant aura. For some reason, he could also sense a baleful qi in the remnant aura. This damnable world is just too small, causing me to have no freedom. I definitely must break it. This thought flashed through his mind, incomparably clear. Breaking apart this world? Stone monkey was just a stone monkey. A spiritual stone monkey was then a spiritual stone monkey. It could then be called the heart monkey and possessed unfathomable magic techniques. A stone monkey evolving into a spiritual stone monkey was a qualitative transformation. This memory illusionscape was something created by the stone monkey gene and had the inheritance of Sun Wukong in it. But wasn't this world a type of restriction too? It restricted the great sage will which caused the baleful qi to appear and permeate the atmosphere, lasting for an eternity and yet to disperse. Without destruction, there can be no creation. Creation comes only after destruction. A sense of enlightenment suddenly appeared in his mind, breaking apart the chaotic thoughts and giving him a sense of clarity. What does it mean to be the great sage? The great sage is equal to the heavens. If Sun Wukong couldn't be equal to the heavens, why would he dare to proclaim himself as the great sage? Heart monkey knows no fear, fighting against the heavens, against the bevy of immortals and Buddhas. If heaven and earth restrict him, just break them apart. Grow, grow, grow. Feng Lin radiated spirit force, causing his body to slowly expand. From a small furry monkey below 6 feet, he was now at a height of roughly 10 meters. He was growing at a speed visible to the naked eyes. After all, this was just a memory world. There were countless possibilities concerning the usage of spirit force. Since there was already a hole in the sky, Feng Lin stimulated his spirit force, flooding his body with it and enhancing his physique as he grew increasingly larger. After some time, he became a giant monkey as tall as the sky, standing on equal grounds with heaven and earth. Break for me. He howled in rage, his voice like thunder. Countless waves were dragged out from the force of his shout. His punches were like mountains, heavily lashing out. With a thunderous bang, lightning and thunder crackled as this world began to collapse. The hole in the sky widened further from the force of his punches. It was like a black hole wanting to devour this world. In the sky, a visible crack that continuously extended outward actually appeared. Rumble. It was as though he had gone crazy. He continued launching punches, and each of his punch had the power to destroy the world. The sky collapsed. The earth sank. The oceans overturned. The mountains crumbled as heavens and earth were destroyed. Fenglin was like the ancient Pan Gu who created the world. With a wave of his hand, boundless divine might flowed forth, sweeping aside all chaos. It was just that Pangu created the heavens and earth, but Fenglin was destroying the heavens and earth instead. Fenglin's punches continued unabated, causing the heaven and earth to shake as this world broke further. The more of the world was destroyed, the more relaxed Fenglin felt, like he had just thrown off invisible shackles and regained his freedom. At this moment, the power of his stone monkey gene started to become more and more active. This was the phenomenon of the gene lock being broken apart. It was really effective. Fenglin silently felt joy as he put in even more effort. Under the reinforcement of his spirit force, Fenglin became a world-destroying giant monkey. He pulled up a mountain and used it as a rod that swung in all directions, unleashing utter devastation. A baleful aura appeared in his heart, and he wanted nothing more than to tear this world apart. And in the end, Fenglin was already standing in a space filled with darkness. The broken world he was in had already been completely destroyed, there were no traces of it left. After heaven and earth were destroyed, the obsession which was the cause of the baleful aura also began to fade. Fenglin felt clearness of mind and was at peace in his heart. He could feel that he had completely thrown off the restriction and returned to the base essence of his gene. There were no more restrictions, and he felt a sense of utter freedom in his heart. If he didn't break through now, when should he do it then? Stone Monkey Gene X10 plus Spirit Gene X10 equals Spiritual Stone Monkey Gene. With an intention of his will, his gene map clearly appeared before his eyes. 2 large golden stars were shining with radiance. They were akin to inextinguishable ancient constellations that were suspended in the starry space, illuminating the darkness around them. Fenglin used his will and attempted to fuse the power from these 2 genes together. The 2 golden stars sparkled as 2 clear streams flowed out from them, gathering together as one. A sea was formed from the accumulation of water droplets, extending toward the depths of the newly formed sea as it sped toward a gigantic dark star that was not unlocked yet. The dark star was in the depths of the starry space and had remained dim for a long time. It was as though it was waiting to be awakened. The astral light was like hundreds of birds returning to their home forest, resembling rivers that flowed into the huge sea and infusing the dark star with boundless energy. Boom, boom, boom. It was like the thumping of a powerful heartbeat. The starry space trembled as thunderous sounds echoed. That dark star began to shine with a golden light. From a dim state, it gradually brightened and radiated a radiance as bright as the sun, illuminating the darkness around it, unchangeable for all eternity. A mysterious message appeared. Gene, Spiritual Stone Monkey Gene. Grade, Perfect Grade Transcendent Gene. Strengthening Tally, 1. Ability, Capable of all transformations. Knowledgeable in astrology and geography. Capable of repositioning the stars. A perfect grade transcendent gene. This spiritual stone monkey gene was actually of the highest perfect grade. A mysterious power coursed through his body, pure to the extreme. However, it felt as ethereal and formless as the clouds, as though it contained the capability of countless transformations within it. Even before he had the time to sense this power, that golden star abruptly changed. It exuded a mighty absorption force and became something like a gigantic black hole, drawing everything in. This absorption was too great. Fenglin's soul had no way to resist and was drawn into it. Again? An exclamation rang out in the starry space. Fenglin's consciousness had already been completely drawn into the newly awakened star. In the darkness, a pair of gleaming golden eyes opened.